2018 fiscal year of $1.5 billion and articulating how the government hopes to fund the budget. The economic growth. The government is hoping to realize an $89.6 million increase from corporation income tax. In the area of international trade, an increase of $6.3 million is projected. A revenue increase of $15.4 million has also been projected from the Citizenship by Investment program. So far, we've heard from the Member of Parliament for Castres East and Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Philip J. Pierre, who was followed by the Member of Parliament for Ancillary Canneries, Honourable Dominic Fady. And just before the break, we heard from the Member of Parliament for Choiseul Saltibus, Honourable Bradley Felix. We don't have the order of the speakers, so we can't tell you who will begin the second round. But as we await the arrival of the speaker, which should be any time from now, just to give an idea of who's in the House, most of the parliamentarians are seated in the gallery. I could see some senators are here, both on the government and opposition side, and independent senators. We are here to witness the second segment of the debate. Well, the Prime Minister, as I said earlier, articulated some of the economic activities as expected to spur on much finance for the country. And as the debate continues, the Prime Minister will speak on some of the 8 priority areas that have been proposed by the St. Lucia Chamber community. So it's going to be we're looking at 2 days of debates, possibly leading into Friday. We don't know yet, with several MPs still to speak. So we will have to wait on the Speaker of the House for that cue. So we have there the Prime Minister. We can see the Honourable East, and also for Castres Central, seated next to her is the Member of Parliament for Choiseul Saltibus. He also has the MP for Soufrière for Sajac, and seated next to him is the Member for Ancillary Canneries, Honourable Dominic Fady. The Member of Parliament for Grosley is also here. So we have most of our MPs already seated, and of course awaiting the arrival of the Speaker for the official commencement of the second part of the broadcast. And as we speak, we take you to the House in just a bit. I see the Sergeant of Arms is making his way in with the mace, which signals the arrival of the Speaker.
Honourable members, when the House last rose, the question before it was that the Honourable House of Assembly do adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2017-2018 in the sum of $1,513,652,200 as a charge against the consolidated fund and other funds of the state of St. Lucia. Honourable Member for Vieux North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Quickly before I start, Madam Speaker, I see we have 2 different times. I just want to be sure that you're following your time.
Honourable Member, we will follow this clock.
This clock, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish, first of all, to thank the Almighty God for giving me another opportunity to represent the people of Vieux North and to also contribute to the development of my country. I wish to thank, Madam Speaker, if you will allow me, the constituents of Belleville, Grace, Pierrot, Montcayen, Opicon, Vieux, Kako, and Savans. I wish, Madam Speaker, to do my best to represent the aspirations of the people of Vieux North. And in this debate on the estimates, Madam Speaker, of revenue and expenditure, this gives me a wonderful opportunity to express how my people feel, and also an opportunity to explore the operations of this government, how they intend to continue to operate, and how, Madam Speaker, this government plans to take this country down a path. But quickly, very disturbed. Prime Minister as a
headmaster.
As a headmaster.
I have a choice one.
So, Madam Speaker, I wish to say that personally, I would prefer every day to have a headmaster than one who many consider to be slowly approaching dictatorship. I would prefer that, Madam Speaker.
Tyrant.
Secondly, Madam Speaker, the member for Choiseul spoke about ficus, and I just want to quickly say that he gave Ficus benjamina a very bad rap, because Ficus benjamina, that plant of which you speak, is a wonderful plant that can actually be grown in a pot in your living room. And although he spoke about ficus, I think he was talking about the benjamina, the benjamina variety. He spoke about it going into toilets and so on. But it's also used, as many people will know, to conserve soil and lots of other things. So it's really how you control it that speaks to the budget. Madam Speaker, I want to say that when I read the estimates of expenditure, revenue and expenditure, Madam Speaker, my own theme for this is that it is a den of contradictions and a deliberate attack on the branches of growth that this government found. It's a den of contradictions, Madam Speaker. The estimates is really a reflection of the ethos, what he has started to cause his cabinet to believe in. It gives a glimpse of the Prime Minister's worldview, Madam Speaker, that the country is a business and that the people are shareholders, that he is the CEO and the cabinet is the board of directors. And so everything in this budget clearly speaks to that. Now, this is a business, and I'm going to operate it as such. I will sell what I want as I see fit, not a man move. Madam Speaker, before I go into the figures, there is a whole history. And I hear people talk about their surprise, they are shocked when they see what the Prime Minister is doing. Why are they shocked, Madam Speaker? From 2007, this is the same gentleman who said that 14 expensive forensic lab. This same Prime Minister said this as Minister of Tourism in 2007 in this house. Why are people surprised? This same Prime Minister said that our patrimony is our credit rating. And why are people surprised? And when you look at the estimates, and I will go to the estimates, I will look at many of the heads and show you why I think, Madam Speaker, that this budget, the estimates is a den of contradictions, and the actions in there are deliberate to attack the shoots and roots and branches of growth. Let's look at the contradictions, Madam Speaker. Regardez pour qui ça me dit. C'est écouter yon bagay, di yon bagay avec faire l'autre bagay obligé. They spoke about the last government making money on gas. fuel at the pump. But Madam Speaker, I have not seen the major decreases in gas prices. What I am seeing in there is the possibility of increased taxes in gas. Cooking gas, Madam Speaker, the 20-pound cylinder, nous ka servi pour bouillir manger en kay nou, is now $33, Madam Speaker. Taxes. What I see in this budget is not what the Prime Minister and his ministers spoke about. What I see in this budget, Madam Speaker, is a widening deficit, a den of contradictions. And how is it that this widening of the deficit can cause us to grow the economy as fast as they're saying? And a member a while ago spoke about confidence. And he said this budget will cause the investors to have confidence. But Madam Speaker, we were in government, and every single meeting, whether it was with the IMF or the World Bank or other experts, indicated that as long as you keep widening your deficit, it is difficult for people in the markets to have confidence in your instruments. So I don't understand this contradiction. So possibly the other side can explain that. How is it that a widening deficit can cause? How is it that a deficit moving from 62 million to over 200 million can cause people who are going to buy your instruments to want to buy more of your instruments? Explain that to me. I did theater, agriculture, and education, so maybe that's why this is there. Madam Speaker, the member for Castries Southeast, I am surprised that the member for Castries Southeast sits here smiling and laughing. But he's the same member who said before that you come to the house with figures with no policy, he doesn't even know what to say. That's why I tell you it's a den of contradictions. Because this member is here in this budget, we have no policy statement. We were criticized heavily for it, that we come with estimates without policy statements. He said at one time that he doesn't even know what to say in the budget. But you are here today, seated in this debate with no policy, and that's fine. A den of contradictions. Adi, ou pas sa vini avec figure to sell. Qui compte pour 10 déchle, c'est figure. À présent, nous ka wè, même bagay la ka fait. Ek, i ka oui, i pa ka di rien. So, Madam Speaker, I say to you, I can't understand it. A den of contradictions. How is it that employment programs like NICE, yo tiye NICE, yo di moun ki ka gade gwa moun a Vieux Fort North, paske yo se leba, yo pa bon kosa yo tiye yo, ek lani lot moun, they said that the NICE program used borrowing. That's what they said. You cannot borrow money. They said that's not real employment. But these same people, they replace the individuals, Madam Speaker. Where are they getting the money to pay these current home health care workers? And I'm always happy when people get employment. But when you disguise it as a replacement, you say it's new employment, but you are replacing the workers. Ou faya se jan na isla, a Vieux Fort North ek lot pays set lisi, paske ou di, yo se leba. Yo se leba, kosa nou faya yo. But Madam Speaker, a den of contradictions. When I peruse the estimates of revenue and expenditure, and I look at programs that are similar, possibly some tweaking, there are many programs, when you add them up, Madam Speaker, you will get very close to the expenditure spent on some of the social programs that they cut. We have NAPS, they call it a training program on page 464, where you're spending over $4 million in salaries. It's called a training program in the office of the Prime Minister. NAPS. It is who benefits from those programs that's important. The government came into office. What do we see? What do we see? As the member for Castries is indicated, that there is more and more VAT coming. This is a government, Madam Speaker, with $12 million. $12 million to a festivals commission, but yet remove $700,000 from the National Trust. A den of contradictions. And when we speak about the National Trust, Madam Speaker, I'm concerned, I'm worried, but my threshold for being upset is not as high as many people today. Because I'll make a statement that I made before, without any fear of contradiction. That any time, any country elects a leader who does not understand the language, that leader can never understand the rudiments of the people's heritage and their culture. I make no fear. I say so. I've said so in the campaign, and I say so. I don't blame the people who are jumping up and saying that this Prime Minister took off money from the National Trust and he's selling lands and so on. You know the position that I have? How can you blame the Prime Minister? I personally believe, Madam Speaker, that he does not understand the rudiments of our culture and how our people operate in this country. This is my firm belief. Because I mundi Premier Minister tiye l'argent National Trust, moun ka demonstrate yo le chimè ka di c'est pour ça qui manière yo vote by UWP et yo le chimè. I found myself on the streets of Castries, very emotional statements. But those statements go to the roots upon culture avec héritage pays cette lisi pas comprendre ni. Cause I lay yo tiye bagay done like this. Because when National Trust organizes workshops for farmers in Vieux North, you think they know that? Lay yo organize a workshop by farmer à Vieux North avec pêcheurs savants, avec palmis, avec fait programme pour Daiva aller Boston the beach. Ou ka Premier Ministre la comprendre ça? Prime Minister doesn't understand that. A den of contradictions, Madam Speaker. We cut the programs, a nice program, but let us look at professional and consultancy services. In 2016-2017, $8,959,764. 2017-2018, $12,066,288. Over $3 million increase. Consultancy and professional services. C'est moun sala. Masav ki lesyo ye. But those $1,000 salaried people. A den of contradictions, Madam Speaker. So we have increased professional and consultancy services by over $3 million. These are the people who get the big salaries. But we have cut people who are getting $800 and $1,000 and single mothers. That goes to the heart of what the Prime Minister and his cabinet believe. This is my view, Madam Speaker. Because Aleyo ka bay go picha, go moun l'argent en consultancy. Yo mette plus passer $3 millions en budget l'année ça là pour consultant. Masav ki les ki consultant ça là. And I recall the member for Castries North, and if he wants me to quote, I have the document. In 2012, when he spoke as leader of the opposition, came into office, the little people, why we dropped them, the 600 and the 700, and he was just trying to say, we need to turn the page, and those people have been fired, and you know, that olive branch and so on, that olive branch should go to them. I remember that very clearly. And I have the actual Hansard. But you see, that tells you something about what the government believes. So, Madam Speaker, in delving into the nitty-gritty of the estimates, I want to explain that revenue is what government collects. tax revenue and non-tax revenue. This government intends to collect $22 million more in revenue. Okay? $25 million more in grants. Quand ça, le gouvernement a apporté, il a joué l'argent qui est en taxe avec ça qui pas taxe. Et l'année 22 millions de dollars, le gouvernement a dit, il a joué plus en taxe avec non-tax revenue. Because the question is, are we going to tax the people more? What items are being taxed? Qui ça nous a mis plus taxe en l'air? Parce que le gouvernement a dit, en budget, il a mis 22 millions de dollars en taxes. The government said its expenditures, salaries and wages, interest and debt, ou obligé payer debt tout. Nous pas goumer avec ça. But the government increases its expenditure, its recurrent expenditure, by $63,488,000. Ça veut dire l'argent gouvernement, oui. L'argent il a payé tous les mois, en l'année à venir, il a dépensé un chai plus l'argent. Avec le gouvernement dit, il a prêté l'argent external, 58 million more dollars, gouvernement a pour prêter. Avec tant ça, Madam Speaker, bonds and treasury bills, and bonds and treasury bills are instruments that are used to raise financing, Madam Speaker. And the government is saying that it will be $36 more than the last year. C'est ça, gouvernement a dit. Remember a comment by a certain minister on the night of the elections that finally the people have taken out Kenny Anthony and the Labour Party from the backs of St. Lucians. I can never forget that. I have the quote, I recorded it for posterity. And I will come back to that quote in a while and remind that same minister in the Ministry of Finance of what he said about VAT and taxes when he was in the Senate, Madam Speaker. And I have the journal there. Because it's a government of contradictions. They say one thing, and then they come back and play a drama and think people forget their core, what they believe, their economics, whatever it is, their finance, what they believe. But the records are there, and I'll remind everybody. But Madam Speaker, let's continue. What does this budget mean for Vieux North? Qui sa Jean Vieux North qui joue un budget ça là? And then what does it mean for our people? It means, Madam Speaker, that fewer people will have confidence in our instruments, and the economists will tell me why they think differently. What it means for Vieux North is this: that the government will not raise this money. The government will have to cut back on expenditure, and it means, therefore, that the future of our people will be in jeopardy. My analysis. Madam Speaker, I'm not a prophet, I just read. Madam Speaker, if we look at the agency on page 151, head 41, agriculture, and so on, I wish to say, Madam Speaker, that agriculture is an area that does contribute to the GDP of this country positively. The Prime Minister made a comment that referred to agriculture and GDP. And I wish to say that while there continues to be challenges in agriculture, weather-related and otherwise, any sound agricultural policy demonstrates that there is increased GDP and widespread distributive impacts in the rural areas and all around St. Lucia. And I know my friend on the other side,
Who's that?
not my personal friend, you know, I'm not a lawyer. The lawyers say my friend, but I know that the Minister for Agriculture loves to jump into those debates with me about who was best, who was not best, I'm not interested in that, Madam Speaker. Because this is not about me. It may be about him. But this is about the farmers. This is about the farmer. And it's about the facts. FACTS. I have challenged him many times, Madam Speaker, to take any 3 years under the Labour Party, and let's compare actual figures. Not jumping up and shouting, you know. Bring the books and let's compare the figures. That's what I've challenged, you know. Not
independent panel.
Yeah, we don't even need judges. Just any school child can read from the Social Economic Review from way back when, 2006, and let's go. That's all I need. But anyway, Madam Speaker, I noticed that there are a number of zeros from last year into this year in the capital. No allocation. The management of Black Sigatoka, no initiative. Page 155, the development one, 758,396. Livestock development project, 0. Commissioning of meat processing plant, 0. Now I'm sure there may be explanation. Madam Speaker, what I want to say is this. There's an allocation for banana rehabilitation, banana production, which clearly, and anytime there is support for agriculture, anyone I'm sure will support. So I support this. I must also say, Madam Speaker, that our constituencies, especially those in the rural areas, will definitely benefit from anything that the government will do to improve banana production and so on. I want to also say, however, Madam Speaker, that this must be directed by scientific research and scientific application. Samuel Kadia, il bon pour n'importe gouvernement aider femmes à figue. Tout gouvernement qui a passé, a aidé femmes à figue. Et nous allons regarder toutes ces limo, la janvier chaque difficulté en figue. Avec difficulté en figue, c'est un bagage qui est plus difficile à présent. Parce que depuis 2010, nous ni Black Sigatoka, et ça qu'a fait ça fait figue là, plus difficile. Although différents gouvernements ça a essayé de faire différents bagages. Moi toujours qu'a dit depuis l'année assistance by farmer, moi content. But what I want to say, Madam Speaker, is this. While I did not see the management of Black Sigatoka as a separate capital item, it got me a little concerned. I don't know if it is part of the 13 million, but if it is not, I want to say categorically that no government, modern banana industry, if there is not a solid program for black men. No government. So whatever this government will do, I'm looking forward to hearing how Black Sigatoka management will fall into this. Our own record, Madam Speaker, on Black Sigatoka management is evident on page 22 of the Social Economic Review. I need not read it, and I need not even talk too much about it now because of time. But we ensured that assistance to bananas was coupled with a strong program of Black Sigatoka management. Ça nous a dit c'est Black Sigatoka management important pour ça ni un bon industry fig. Il est important. Et que moi pas ouais un budget, moi ga regarder pour ça qui fait. Madam Speaker, I now hear that the 15,000 and nothing more on this. Certainly, Madam Speaker, much success has been recorded. On page 158, Madam Speaker, there seemed to be a de-emphasis in the estimates on livestock development. I don't know why this is so. Because when you read the Social Economic Review, Madam Speaker, you will note that last year the livestock subsector recorded double-digit growth. And that has been happening for 2 to 3 years. So I don't know why this government, again, it's contradiction. You have a subsector that is recording growth and doing well, and not just this year or last year. The figures are there. And in this budget, I don't see the emphasis. I do not see the capital for the livestock development program funded by IBSA, which started when we were in government. Madam Speaker, Mokawe production animaux fait bien l'année passée. C'est lui qui fait plus bien agricole. Mais en budget gouvernement, moi pas qu'à ouais pièce estimation pour aider les animaux, aider femmes aux animaux. Ma savent si c'est ouais à côté, mais ma qu'à ouais. Madame Speaker, nous tenions un projet qui nous te joint l'argent sorti India, South Africa et Brazil. Et quand le projet a commencé, Madam Speaker, we purchased goats, sheep, and lots of other programs had already started. I do not know what is the status of this. It is not in the estimates. Madam Speaker, Beau Séjour, as we all know, is now being demolished. Production, certainly, based on what I'm seeing, will go out of the way. And again, Madam Speaker, this livestock development project is a project across governments. The study was done in 1999. I have the whole study, the report and everything, which recommended certain things to happen in livestock development. And Madam Speaker, certain things were done and others are yet to be done. So it is not something about one government or another government. And we saw the work of the vets and the livestock development specialists in the ministry to take it to where it was. And I don't see anything in the capital. Madam Speaker, I am happy with what I've seen with the results of the livestock subsector. Of course it can be better, but it clearly indicates, Madam Speaker, that the work that was done by our partners certainly bore fruit. Because as a gens qui ni animaux, cochon, poule, Madam Speaker, qu'a fait bien, qu'a fait bien en pays cette ici. Fisheries development infrastructure. Madam Speaker, fisheries development infrastructure under this head, there is zero. The fisheries development program included training, basic capital for FADs, fishery conservation, and so on. There was a $14 million infrastructure project where at Dennery, Grosile, Ancillary, and major changes at Vieux in the ice machine and the refrigerants happened last year. Nous faisons un changement en ces affaires la pêche là. I don't see anything in the budget for fisheries development. The building of 2 jetties at Parliamentary and Savans, for the first time, Madam Speaker, need financing to continue to facilitate the quarters at both Parliamentary and Savans. Je suis bien content, Madam Speaker, qui, pour première fois à Vieux North, nous faisons un chè by ces gens Savans qui étaient aller, ces gens Palmis qui étaient aller en gloire à 2h du matin, pour combien de générations, combien de monde mort avec ces ça yo connaître. Je suis bien content nous de faire ça avec ces gens Parliamentary, Madam Speaker. At Parliamentary, they stayed with their own jetty for generations, Madam Speaker. And we came in and assisted with the construction of a new jetty. I would have thought that there would be capital injection in there to ensure that the facilities around would be properly done and done well. Madam Speaker, fisheries continue to play an important role. Last I checked, Madam Speaker, over 1,200 registered fishers work in this country, and we're not even talking about people whom they pay. So I believe, Madam Speaker, fisheries must attract capital injection. Example, Madam Speaker, en Vieux North même nous n'y a chay pêché, a Guassan project, there is continuing to contribute to the agricultural sector, and that is good. I continue to say thanks, Madam Speaker, even as I'm no longer in the ministry, to those who have worked hard of the team to ensure that we implemented many aspects of the BAM. And I'm very happy that the BAM continues to deliver to the farmers of St. Lucia. I see it in the estimates. Madam Speaker, forestry. And I heard the Prime Minister spoke about an increase to agriculture of 49 million. I don't know what he meant by that, because when you say that, sometimes, you know, people hear you and say, Prime Minister, 49 million. Madam Speaker, the ministry has been reconstituted. And this 49 million in capital includes forestry and the other areas that were not in our ministry. I want to make it clear that the 49 million is not just agriculture. Ministre agricole abweza ni l'autre département aba ministry. Because a lot than 49 million, okay? Lani, Lord Bagay. Madam Speaker, on the forestry, I noticed that the Lancer tree support is gone. There is no more support for the Lancer project. I noticed also, Madam Speaker, that the water resources management, the Vieux water supply, and that Vieux water supply project, is very, very important, Madam Speaker, to the people of Vieux North. That Vieux water supply project would have included communities in Vieux North. As we know, Madam Speaker, at Bellevue, the water intake at Bellevue is a serious problem. And the Vieux water supply project, all right, the technical team had indicated that a treated water line would have come from Laritret to Bellevue and would supply Piero and the other areas. I was very excited, Madam Speaker. There is an allocation in the budget, but I don't know the status of this because this allocation does not look like it means any substantial work will be done. Head 43, Madam Speaker. Department of Infrastructure. The Department of Infrastructure is of great interest to me. You had your chance to speak, you didn't speak, now you're talking. The Department of Agriculture is of great interest to me. And Slurry Canaries people should be ashamed of you. Page 206, Madam Speaker. Page 206. Code 291. In the last year's budget allocations, there were allocations, Madam Speaker, for initial preparations on the proposed agricultural, feeder and agricultural roads phase 2. The proposal was for the QAT government to fund those roads. Madam Speaker, this year the figure is 0. And there are a number of roads in Vieux North that were down to benefit number of communities, Madam Speaker. We visited the roads. We had meetings with the technical staff. And Madam Speaker, I was hoping that this project will continue. There may be some explanation. Mais je voulais dire c'est janvier for North là. Tout ça me do about QAT funds roads en Vieux for North. Chime. Nous des années road, the Bamboo Road, Grace to Violet Road, the Mukle Road in Bellevue, mais nous crions Perino Road, other feeder roads in Bellevue, and the Bamboo to Kako Road. All of those roads were there, and this year they are no longer there. Madam Speaker, I want to say also that under the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Bellevue to Opico Road project started and we had tremendous progress. And I wish to thank the former minister and the former government for the assistance. And the road was completed after the elections, just the paving. But Madam Speaker, from Zabo to Bellevue, to the Romo-Poleon MBE, Romo-Poleon gap, is the second section of the road that needs attention. I will not cast any aspersions on the current Minister for Infrastructure. I will wait because I prefer to see results or non-results before I speak or criticize. So I am urging the government to continue on this project, this particular project, so that the people of Opico to Bellevue can see the road completed. Madam Speaker, the Beauséjour to Grace Road is also a very important project. And under the CDP, contracts were already signed and contracts in CDP works did not begin after the elections. They were asked not to begin. So I'm hoping, Madam Speaker, that those drains can be completed because it really was not making any sense to go ahead and do work on that, especially the Laritret Grace portion, the Beauséjour Laritret portion. without proper drainage. Under Head 56 CDP program, we did benefit from the CDP program, Madam Speaker, a number of areas, including refurbishing the Bellevue Court, and there were still works for persons who hold contracts for works in Bayi, Aldonza Lane, Culture Lane, the gap behind the Bellevue School, and contracts were also signed Back Street, Montview, and drainage. Well, I spoke about drainage from Laurette to Montview. Plans were there for the gap leading to Miss Afe, Opiko Road Network, and the completion of the road at Zukla area. Madam Speaker, I hope that once again we are not asked, we are not asked to continue to cry. Madam Speaker, while our work in the CDP, we did not complete all of our work, we did benefit and many of the communities received assistance. Head 53, Madam Speaker, Health. Primary health care, the Laurishus Health Center allocation disappeared, 0. I'm sure the member for Denry North will expound. The St. Jude's Hospital, we are yet to receive, Madam Speaker, an allocation of 19 million is allocated for the St. Jude's Hospital. We are yet to receive the formal explanation of why the project was stopped. We are yet to receive the explanations from the minister. We have asked time and time again for the report to be made public and let whatever has to happen, happen. But that is yet to come. The partners in the St. Jude's Hospital did commit to financial assistance, and they spent close to $1 million trying to reveal secrets, tanto. Trying to find who would go to jail, and eventually trying to find a missing cross somewhere. But tanto. Madam Speaker, the hospital by now would have been transferred to its new location. Madam Speaker, under Head 54, Youth and Sports. Work, Madam Speaker, had started on the Piero Playing Field Rehabilitation Project. We completely reshaped the field with assistance by CDP, and we are hoping that more work can be done on the playing fields in Vieux Fort North. The Bellevue Playing Field Project, as we said in Parliament before, our government acquired the joining lands next to the Bellevue Playing Field as the first step to re-engineering the private hands. Was still in private hands. Our government acquired that land, and so all the land around the Bellevue Playing Field. And now we are able to move on ensuring that this field is properly organized. Let us hope, Madam Speaker, that the government, through its projects, allow the youth of Vieux Fort North to continue to benefit from its youth and sports programs. I also, Madam Speaker, note that there's an allocation on the grants and contributions to youth and sports councils. I note a 6,000 allocation, and the Vieux Fort North Youth and Sports Council, headed by Ms. Eleanor Joseph, I'm sure, will use that as a means of seeding other projects. There are other young leaders like Curtly Joseph, the Vieux cricketers, Ms. Brenda Polio, and the rest of the young people who are doing a wonderful job. In particular, the young people from the churches. Many people don't realize, Madam Speaker, that there are youth groups in the churches, and they too are making their contribution in Vieux Fort North. And I'm hoping that if the youth church groups contact the ministry, then they will get assistance. Head 57, Madam Speaker. Town and village councils fall under that head. Madam Speaker, the Vieux Fort North Rural Council has been formed, as we all know, and I'm still delicately analyzing my options for nomination to the board. I understand, Madam Speaker, that there are some people who have decided the law for themselves and have gone in and placed somebody, their own estimations, that Moses Baptiste is not the real rep for Vieux North. Madam Speaker, I only hope that the council reads the act that governs councils, because they are to run their affairs as the act indicates.
Honourable Member for Vieux North, you have 15 minutes within which to complete your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will complete on time. That the activities of the council are according to the act. We have had some very bad history in Vieux North, yet to be determined, Madam Speaker, about councils and their operations in financial matters. I said yet to be determined, because some of those matters will not rest. Madam Speaker, I also hope that, as I note on page 459, that Emancipation Day La Rose and La Marguerite attract some $20,000. I am not sure whether the Festivals Commission will assist here, but I wish to say, Madam Speaker, that without getting any raps from my colleagues here, I wish to say that Vieux North, with the Belleville Laos Group, boasts the best Laos Group in the whole of St. Lucia. Nous qui n'y pli belle groupe Laos, pli active, like myself, Mam Denrinoff Kaibabe, people like Miss Jennifer Aldonza, Kendall Elver, and the Belleville Development Committee. Laos plays an important role in the community of Vieux North, and I dare say in the rest of St. Lucia. It builds social capital. So, Madam Speaker, je vais supporter l'argent que vous avez Laos. Il pas assez. $20,000 pas assez que vous avez consultant $3 million, Madam Speaker. We started our own drumming festival in Vieux North, Madam Speaker, and under this same head, I am hoping that it extends to parts of the constituency, and we are hoping that we are not discriminated against when we apply for funds to hold our drumming and arts festival this August. It will be the third drumming and arts festival in Vieux North, where we bring drummers and so on. We are hoping to attract East Indian drumming and to help the schools participate. Madam Speaker, I wish to say also that in terms of local government, we have to really be careful that we don't come to the constituencies of members of parliament, even though in opposition, and say that they have done nothing for Ramopolio. How absurd! Madam Speaker, Commission Kaijwen Metli. Madam Speaker, we've done nothing for Ramopolio. We have named a street after Ramopolio. It's because something's happening in the community. And people like Ramopolio and the people of Vieux North, who are musicians and Laos people and so on, drummers, poets, nous pas acheter pièce go auto title from Moon. Every weekend, every day, there's an activity in our constituency, in Grace, in Vieux, in Belleville. So when you come to Vieux North and say, oh, they have done nothing for Ramopolio, what do you do Ramopolio, sir? Madam Speaker, the guidelines for SSDF, I am happy with the allocations, but Madam Speaker, I urge the government once again, to stop using defeated UWP candidates to run government programs. And in Vieux North, Madam Speaker, the office of the United Workers' Party is where people go to get their names on certain government programs. Madam Speaker, the SSDF, I will say, the checks and so on, the channels are through the losing candidate of the United Workers' Party in Vieux North. Madam Speaker, I wish to urge the SSDF that we should continue the work of the SSDF with fire victims I mean, I have one right now, and I'm sure she'll not mind if I mention her name, Miss Lisa Aurelis of Pierrot, her house, a single mother, her house completely burnt down. And I'm hoping that the work that we're doing to rebuild her house, I'm sure this government will be willing to assist. Madam Speaker, as I close, and I want the quote, I don't want to leave out the quote. Madam Speaker, as I close, proud head 48. The Opico community was identified, Madam Speaker, as a recipient of proud. And the surveys have been done. The surveys have been done at Opico. And I'm hoping that under proud, we can continue. I'm hoping that under proud, we can continue. C'est Jean Opico, Moué en budget, l'année en estimation pour proud. Et pour ça, proud, ce programme-là, nous mettons côté gouvernement, qui a pensé avec faire un bon arrangement avec vous, pour jouer une petite poutre avec, pour payer, pour faire un bon arrangement. We started that at Opico. And Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that our people are not discriminated against. Because Opico, the people of Opico, ex-Jean Opico, travail wed, pour bâtir Opico, à Briseland restaurant, l'année toute qualité bail. In fact, tonight there's a big stewed goat night every Wednesday night. And those of you going to the south should pass there. I'm not sponsoring, I'm not sponsoring. Madam Speaker, Crown Lands on the head 47. I'm just trying to tell you, the people of Vieux North are hardworking. C'est gens Vieux North là qui développé comme nous. Et nous pas le gouvernement flambeau discriminate against you parce que you vote libre. Head 47, Madam Speaker. As I wind down, I suspect the time guide me. Head 47, physical planning, page 280. Crown Lands, Madam Speaker. We started this project with the people of Fonjoyer. And all those of you who pass through Vieux North, you know Fonjoyer is a special community. Many years, those people never wanted to live right by, they live next to the river. And no matter which government, and I suspect all governments have encouraged them, they say, sorti ball of here, but they love their river and so on. But last year, early 2016, a group of them came to me and said, Moussa, nous voulons quitter Bolovia because of the frequency of the floods and so on. So we engaged the Department of Physical Planning. And I was very happy with their response. The people came down one time and they identified Vevacel in Bellevue for the relocation of some of those people. We went there, we had site visits and so on. I am urging this government to continue this project. There are 7 families at Mont Cayenne, the Auguste family, who live on a hill. And we went there with Crown Lands and they were promised that they would be relocated to certain lots in Opico, behind the place the nuns live. There c'est Meoula Kawete. C'est Jean, c'est Miss Auguste, c'est Mounsa, Rudy Auguste, c'est famille qui Kawete en Morna. The last storm, Madam Speaker, one of these houses split in 2. And the department promised that they would do this. So I'm just hoping that this government does not discriminate. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that when we were in government, that our government, after much deliberation, advice from the Attorney General, coming and going, getting the best advice, did agree victims of St. Jude's. There's a cabinet conclusion, and the victims, their wives, their families were informed. When we left government, the time we left government, those payments had not been made. After that, Madam Speaker, some of the victims visited the office of the Prime Minister. And I was told that they were told, Madam Speaker, Makadi, gouvernement nous délibéré, il prend chaitan, oui. The government, because we don't do illegal things and just pay things. That's the thing. Nous sommes advise Attorney General, aller avec Vieux, avec nous te faire décision pour payer famille ces mouna qui joignent mort en diffé St. Jude's là. Là nous quitter gouvernement, paiement ça a pas encore été fait. Après élection, ces mouna aller en office Premier ministre là, avec yo di yo, aller acheter Moussa. I laid there. Madam Speaker, I wish to say that whether it's 5 years or 4 years, we will see. Madam Speaker, I end with this. Madam Speaker, I end with this quote. Madam Speaker, they specifically told me it wasn't the PM. Although I criticized him harshly for other things, I asked if it was the PM. This PM. They said, no, not him. Somebody else. Tanto. Madam Speaker, I close with this quote. And it goes to what I spoke about contradictions. Gouvernement sa ani mouna di dayi ki ka fe diferent bagay. And it's a quote from April 20th, 2011 in the Journal of the Senate, pages 74 and 75, by then Senator Eubalus Raymond, Dr. Eubalus Raymond, speaking about taxes, Madam Speaker. And here is what, and I quote. And he was talking about the UWP government then. And I quote, Mr. President, if this government is trapped for cash, if revenue is a major concern of this government, why is this government running away from value-added tax, VAT? Why? Is this government running away from VAT, Mr. President? You know that in the VAT white paper, in fact, not just the white paper, I personally went to the VAT office on my return to St. Lucia a year ago, and I sat with them. Among the many things we spoke about, and among the many questions I asked them, what will be the government's positions as far as revenue is concerned? Their response was, the government will have an increase in revenue. The white paper also says the same. The VAT white paper says, and I read, the VAT is a high revenue yielding tax, resulting in an increase in tax buoyancy. The responsiveness of tax revenue to change in GDP. This is the white paper. The white paper is saying that the VAT will increase government's revenue. It also says that the increase in revenue results in the narrowing of the current account. There it is, right here. Here is an answer to increasing the revenue. He's talking about the UWP government then. Every time this government comes to the House, we are afraid to implement VAT. The government has a source, a legitimate source of raising the revenue of the government, and they are pushing it away. St. Lucia is the only CARICOM country, apart from the British colonies, who have not implemented VAT. Only one. Why? Are you afraid of it? Instead, the government keeps borrowing over 1 billion so far, over 1 billion, unquote. The question I ask, that was UWP, that was 2011, April. The question I ask, yes, we supported him then, of course, his policies.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes within which to complete your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The question that I ask, Madam Speaker, is the economic advice, the current economic advice, based on a transformation? Is it based on an intellectual transformation? Or is it based on an expedient political foundation? Kiman here at 2011, Amoun qui fait un PhD en economics, qu'a dit gouvernement peut implémenter VAT, avec Jordia, VAT qui plus mauvais bagay, et c'est une transformation qui fait. Madam Speaker, moi ça c'est pas la rose. That's how, you see again, the heritage of our people. So you disin la rose. Moi c'est la rose qui la rose n'est plus discipline passée. Madam Speaker, I wish to say in conclusion that the estimates of this budget, Madam Speaker, are contradictory in nature. The measures in there will cause St. Lucians to suffer more taxing, gas increase, and the sectors, the support that's been given by the sectors, especially in the areas of training and so on, Madam Speaker, I ask who will benefit. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will continue very much, Madam Speaker.
Mic off, please, Honourable Member for
sorry.
Northwood South. Honourable Member for Babonneau, Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries, Physical Planning, Natural Resources and Cooperatives.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to start my presentation by expressing my appreciation, if you allow me, Madam Speaker, to the people of Babonneau, for once again putting me on this side of the House. And I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for giving me the opportunity to serve in the respective capacities and responsibilities that he have given me. Madam Speaker, or Vieux North. And I must say, Madam Speaker, I've had the opportunity to listen to him in opposition. I've had the opportunity to listen to him as the Minister for Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Cooperatives, and Rural Development. And I'm listening to him tonight again in opposition. And Madam Speaker, I must say, nothing has changed. I am here to face him in the face and speak to him directly, through you. I tried to communicate to him through the Senate, and he was not listening. He was not taking my advice, Madam Speaker. Now we are there face to face. Madam Speaker, in his presentation, he made reference to a number of zeros. And he called the budget a din of contradiction. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, that will be my theme for my presentation today, because I will show him all the contradictions that he, as Minister of Agriculture, during his time. Madam Speaker, I have the copy of the estimates, the capital estimates for 2016, 2017. I want to ask a question, Madam Speaker. All the projects he says missing in this year's estimates, where were they in 2016-17? Where were they? You were the Minister of Agriculture. Now you come and say, Madam Speaker, that these projects are missing and they were not in the estimates when you were the Minister of Agriculture, Madam Speaker.
He forget.
Youth in agriculture, he said no allocation this year.
He didn't say a word about that.
He said no allocation this year for youth in agriculture. A project I will speak to during the policy debate, because it's not part of the estimates. But I must say, Madam Speaker, that in 2016-17, no allocation was made for youth in agriculture. He speaks about coffee project. Good job.
He said they would plant coffee sometime.
Madam Speaker, you know the coffee project? All the coffee plants are in Bath, overgrown. Not one farmer purchased one coffee plant. He said that Beausejour is now being demolished. Beausejour is now being demolished. Madam Speaker, I want to ask the member for Vieux North, what did he do for Beausejour? I'm taking a lot of criticisms from my colleague trying to keep Beausejour alive. Because Beausejour is not being demolished. Beausejour is dead. It's dead. The only thing that happened in Beausejour, Madam Speaker, was an office for the member of Vieux North. That only happened in Beausejour, you know. A new office. I ain't hot yet. You speak about fisheries development. Madam Speaker, let me tell you what's happened to fisheries development. When we came in, we found the construction of booths for the fishermen in Savans Bay and in Pualin, undertaken by the government of Taiwan. When I went to them, they told me, because of the pace in the development and the implementation of that project, the money went back to Taiwan. Slow implementation, $600,000. So now we are negotiating with the government of Taiwan to see if you can get that money back into St. Lucia to finish the project.
You didn't tell the people that.
L'argent pour faire Kaila pour aller. Pour essayer de pêcher à Pualin. Et puis c'est pas pêcher à Savans Bay. L'argent ça a vient Taïwan. Because ministre agricole partait ça implémenter projet pour yo ça fait vitement. Pour projet ça fini à l'air. So gouvernement Taïwan voyait l'argent à vie. Actuellement, gouvernement fait ici et puis ministre agricole qui a parlé puis Taïwan pour porter l'argent à vie. That is why it's not in the budget. Slow implementation. Slow implementation, Madam Speaker. Dean of contradictory. Madam Speaker, I want to refer to, and my contribution will start with a presentation that was made on the 27th of April, 2012. And tomorrow will be 5 years. A presentation was made in this Honorable House, Madam Speaker, 27th of April, 2012. And tomorrow will be 5 years. And Madam Speaker, I'm quoting. I look at Head 41, Ministry of Agriculture, for which the former Minister of Agriculture must be commended. And I'm quoting from Hansard, 27th April 2012, page 72. And the individual continued to say, Madam Speaker, I wish to compliment the present Minister of Agriculture for seeing wisdom in implementing a number of the projects started by the former Minister of Agriculture. And he went on to name these projects. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, Madam Speaker, still in the estimates, you know why? They were not implemented successfully.
After 5 years.
After 5 years. And Madam Speaker, the member at the time spoke of the establishment of the National Marketing Infrastructure, the Structure and Central Marketing Board, the establishment of the Agro Processing Facility. He went on to say major repairs to agricultural infrastructure. He spoke about youth agricultural entrepreneurial project, the YAP project he's speaking about. He spoke about the acquisition of the SLBC lands in the Mabia Valley. He spoke about Black Sikatoka. So Black Sikatoka didn't start when the member came in. He continued the Black Sikatoka program. He's speaking there like it's a project he started, Madam Speaker. He was continuing a project he got when he came in 2011. The person spoke about the agricultural diagnostics facility. The member of Parliament who spoke about these projects at the time, recognizing my effort and congratulating him for continuing the project, was in 2012. 5 years, Madam Speaker, a lot of these projects still are on the books for us to be financed. Madam Speaker, the first project. Dean of contradiction. the agro-processing facility, which was a project started 5 years ago. And Madam Speaker, we have allocated this in this financial year $370,000 to finish that project. And we shall finish that project, Madam Speaker. Because, you know, Madam Speaker, we are hearing a lot of comments out there about the government not giving support to agro-processing, the government not establishing agro-processing facilities. We have a lot of wastage. But, Madam Speaker, when we were in government in 2006, 2011, 2 facilities and 4 also. Madam Speaker, 2 facilities. And we continued with the construction of the cocoa fermentary. We continued with it. And Madam Speaker, I want to quote Madam Speaker, because you see, when people stand up here and speak about contradiction and saying one thing and doing the next, and want to quote Hansard and go into Hansard. I went into Hansard. And I went into Hansard of 2012, where the then Minister of Agriculture, the member for Vieux North, made his contribution. And hear what he said, Madam Speaker, when he was asked about agro-processing. And I'm quoting. He said he was responding to a question that was asked of him, and his Hansard, 27th April 2012, page 73. He said, Madam Speaker, and that's how he started. Mr. Speaker, thank you. I invoke Standing Order 32.5 to respond very quickly to a few questions. That's what he said. And he went on to say, Madam Speaker, I wish to respond, Mr. Speaker, by indicating to the member, through you, Mr. Speaker, that the agro-processing plant, which is located in Alger, has... He went on to say, a large number of pieces of equipment were purchased by the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, ICA. Finished, completed. Sorry? He said it is completed. He continued, Madam Speaker, and he reported that the cocoa fermentary, what the hell is it about cocoa fermentary? The equipment need to be installed, so which means there were equipment already purchased. And he went on to say that there is a need to install electricity and water, and they are in discussion with St. Lucia Premier Producers Group to manage the facility since 2012. Contradiction.
So is it finished?
So, Madam Speaker, we have allocated...
So it did finish.
to open it. Madam Speaker, the MPF, the meat processing facility, had 220 meat processing facility. This financial year, Madam Speaker, we have allocated $750,000 and $58,396 to pay off all outstanding bills for that facility. I'm going to that. Madam Speaker, why after 5 years this facility is still closed? Why after 5 years a facility as important, you spoke so much about livestock, Madam Speaker, spoke so much about livestock, a facility as important for the livestock industry. After 5 years, when you came in, you admitted that it's going to finish in a couple of months, and I'll come to it in a while. After 5 years, Madam Speaker, that facility is still closed. Apart from being closed, cost overrun. Now, you know, I'm hearing when I was working in the Blue House, but I'm the one that is responsible for it not being open. And then I'm the one responsible for all the cost overrun. But Madam Speaker, hear what he said in 2012. Madam Speaker, when he came in 2011, that facility was 80% completed. 80%. 80%. And I want to express my appreciation to the government and people of Taiwan, because that's the single largest investment that they have made to St. Lucia, $12 million. Madam Speaker, I want to reference Hansard again, 2012. April 27th, tomorrow 5 years, page 74. He said, the former minister spoke about the changes that were done by the contractor under the advice of the engineer. This situation did delay of the project. And I remember, Madam Speaker, coming to this honorable house and agreeing to this. We said that there were changes done without the advice of the engineer, and that put a hole in the project. And like he said, Madam Speaker, we were discussing at the time the foundation, the substructure, the foundation. But in 2012, he reported that they have revised the estimates. And I recall the then Minister of Finance and myself and all the technocrats did revise the estimates. And because of the changes, it's going to cost $1.5 million more. So I am aware of all that. But he said, Madam Speaker, that the revised estimate now stands at $12.637 million. That's what he said, you know. The meat-processing facility would have cost $12,637,000, the revised estimate in 2012. And he said that the project will be completed by mid-May or early June 2012. Ça dit, il dit projet qui est fini en juin 2012. You know, Madam Speaker, what happened? You know what happened, Madam Speaker? In 2014, he presented an estimate for the project. It went up from 12.6 million to $18.4 million in 2012, 2013, 2014. Was Ezekiel the Minister of Agriculture? Was I the Minister of Agriculture? It went up again, Madam Speaker, in 2014, 2015 to $19.4 million. Who was the Minister of Agriculture, Madam Speaker? When you admitted that the revised estimate in 2012 was going to cost $12 million, under your watch, it moved from $12 million. And what I'm hearing, Madam Speaker, this facility costs over $20 million. Contradiction. Den of contradiction. Oh, den of contradiction. Thank you very much.
But you are the dean. The dean. You are the dean. In the den of contradiction.
Madam Speaker, I move on. The Agricultural Transformation Project. The BAM. And I too would like to echo the sentiments expressed by the member for Beaufort North, congratulating the staff members on that project. I want to congratulate them because when I speak to my other colleagues, St. Lucia is the country is doing the best in the implementation of that project. And I really want to congratulate Mr. Compton and all those who are involved. And I want to congratulate him for his leadership. But I have concerns, Madam Speaker. We'll cut too fast. When we started discussing that project, Madam Speaker, and the Minister of Finance is there to testify to that, we were looking at an allocation of over $60 million. And I recall the farmers, Madam Speaker, calling the radio station saying, give me my money, give me my money. You cannot use my money for diversification. The money is supposed to go into bananas. Fig. The allocation, Madam Speaker, was based on our production level. During the period 2006 to 11, we were averaging about 32,000 tons a year, more or less. When I told the farmers I have not received the money, we are just preparing projects for $60 million, there were persons on the other side who were giving them the impression that we had already received the monies, Madam Speaker. But you know what happened, Madam Speaker? In 2013, the allocation moved from $60 million to $36 million. And you want to know why, Madam Speaker? Because our production level for bananas went down drastically under the watch for the member of Vieux North. We moved from an average of 42,000 tons a year from that to about blend the euro. Blend the euro. Madam Speaker, under this allocation, Madam Speaker, this year we have allocated $10.9 million to continue the project. And I want to say that one of my biggest disappointments is that there's nothing substantial to support agricultural production. Apart from the Black Sticker Took Up program, there's nothing substantial in this grant funding to support production. Everything went into infrastructure, training. Nothing substantial for agricultural development. And that is one of my biggest disappointments, Madam Speaker. But we will continue the project, and I know that we will be able to continue the good works that have started as it pertains to this project, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, $13.8 million for a banana rehab program. And I'm hearing a lot of future. We'll be selling bananas to Martinique. One of the ministers of agriculture, there's no two ministers of agriculture, Madam Culture. Since we came in, Madam Speaker, we have spoken to some of the major importers, supermarkets in the UK, and prime with them, and they have given a commitment that they want more. We went to Martinique, we spoke with a company in Martinique, we went to France, and France is saying that they want St. Lucia bananas. So there are opportunities for us to market our bananas, Madam Speaker. So that is why we're going to implement a 3-year program to give support to our farmers. And to answer him, yes, Black Sticker Took Up will be part of that project. The management of Black Sticker Took Up. Because like I told you, you cannot have a Black Sticker Took Up program alone and expect to see an increase in production. You said you train in agriculture, and I know you train in agriculture, but managing the disease alone, you would not realize an increase in production. You must have a holistic approach, soil conditions, nutritional conditions. All these are important to impact on productivity and production.
You must have a business-like approach.
And that is why, Madam Speaker, that is why we're going to start this project. And yes, the management of Black Sticker Took Up will be part and parcel of that new project moving forward. And just this week, Madam Speaker, just this week we met with representatives from France who have engaged us in the trial shipment, and they have given a commitment that they're still interested. And to answer the question, yes, we're looking at January 2018. Why? Our production levels are still low. We're just recovering from Matthew. So we're not in a position now to commit ourselves to shipping to France. So based on our project that we're going to start after budget, and with our support will be given the farmers, we shall see an increase in production, Madam Speaker, which will allow us to capitalize on the opportunity that the French market provides. So, Madam Speaker, you shall be seeing us moving from the dismal 8,000, 10,000 tons a year to at least 30,000 tons, 40,000 tons, and by year 3 of the project. Madam Speaker, we also have an allocation there of 256, an allocation of $3.8 million to continue the program we started post Tropical Storm Matthew. I must say, and I want to compliment and express our appreciation to the Minister of Finance for assisting our farmers. I know some of them have said that they have not gotten all what was promised, but I can assure them that with that allocation, they shall be getting what we promised them. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, because we want to have the banner project, we shall see more support being given to our farmers. But Madam Speaker, one of the fundamental remedial works on farm roads, and I must say, that created an interest, Madam Speaker. Identify 13 farm roads to be constructed under the BAM. I hear because of the reduction in the euro, it went down to 36. But the reality is that only 4 farm roads were constructed with support from the BAM money. So as a cabinet, Madam Speaker, and based on the feedback that we received post-Matthew, with the works we did on the farm roads, the Minister of Finance has agreed that we need to look at a comprehensive program as it pertains to farm roads. And in the coming weeks, I shall be articulating, Madam Speaker, in this Honourable House, that program. But we have identified 45 farm roads, and now we are doing the assessment between the evaluation between asphalt and concrete. And the Prime Minister is saying that he will prefer the roads to be done in concrete. So, Cassis no farm farms. So, Madam Speaker, we shall be undertaking farm roads project. The resources will be made public in the coming weeks. Vieux North said is one of the institutions that I have. There are 2 projects, 2.202 and 203. 202 is the Vieux water supply redevelopment, and 203 is the Dennery water supply redevelopment. The member for Vieux North asked about that project, and I know he would have interest in it, and rightfully so. And I have no problems in he asking about it, because it will impact positively people in his constituency and surrounding communities. But you know what's interesting, Madam Speaker? When I read the reports of the then Prime Minister from 2012, to 2013, every year he would have mentioned about these projects. Every year. Saying the same thing. We are planning and we're going to implement.
As usual.
We're going to improve the service, reliability, and quality of water for the people. We're going to upgrade the distribution infrastructure. We're going to construct new intakes. We're going to install additional treatment capacity. For the past 5 years, that was his theme, Madam Speaker, as Minister of Finance, as it pertains to these two projects. I've started these projects, and I'm sure the member for Denry North would, during his presentation, express his appreciation for the commencement of the project in Denry North. We have started phase 1, and we, in the coming months, will open tender for phase 2. So that project will be completed. In the case of Vieux South, Madam Speaker, this financial year, we are going to look at 3 major activities. And this one by one, Madam Speaker, because next year I want to be evaluated on what I reported this year. So at least you can see progress as far as what we are able to accomplish. So the first target, Madam Speaker, the allocation of $5.9 million would be for consultants. The second target, and the third objective for this financial year will be to open the tendering process. So I want to say, Madam Speaker, to answer the member for Vieux North, we shall start the process as far as that project is concerned, and the allocation you see there of the $5.9 million is to fund these activities. Madam Speaker, the John Compton Dam, which is not part of this allocation, but I'm sure St. Lucians would want to hear what's happening to the John Compton Dam, and I want to say that during the discussion of the policy, I shall be updating St. Lucians as to our thinking and the way we intend to approach the desilting of the John Compton Dam. Madam Speaker, I want to express my appreciation to the Minister of Finance. Like he said, we have seen the allocation for agriculture increase. On behalf of the farmers and the stakeholders, to say thank you to the Minister of Finance for his interest in agriculture. We all know that it's very challenging times. We all know that it's not easy managing change, Madam Speaker. 2011, that like the 5 good years that we experienced during the period of 2011-2016, we as a government would have done wonders with the agricultural sector. We did not experience these good years during the time we were there. We had 2 hurricanes. We had a major drought. And yet still, Madam Speaker, we saw an increase in production. We hear a lot about the livestock sector and increase in production. But I want to say, Madam Speaker, the increase in production in the livestock sector is accomplished through the intervention of less farmers, less bigger farmers. When I spoke with the executive of the pig producers, you know what they told me, Madam Speaker? During the period 2011 to 2016, over 40 farmers left the industry. 40. You know why? The meat processing facility, which would have assisted them to provide reliable market, has not been open. If you go around, Madam Speaker, You see a number of poultry pens vacant. And Madam Speaker, we shall be implementing policies to encourage these farmers to get back into production with the help of the Minister of Finance and my colleagues here, because most of them represent constituencies that are agricultural based. And Madam Speaker, some of them are practicing farmers. Some of them are practicing farmers, Madam Speaker. I'm sure. I'm sure that we'll get the support as required. So, Madam Speaker, in the coming weeks, we shall be articulating the policies that we shall be implementing to impact positively on the agricultural sector. Now, I'm sure that the farmers will embrace these policies, because you now see an interest in agriculture, Madam Speaker. You see farmers going back to the fields. You see vacant land being cultivated. After Tropical Storm Matthew, we saw a number of farmers went out there and start rehabilitating the field, not waiting for the Minister of Agriculture or the Ministry of Agriculture or the government of the United Workers' Party. You know why? They have the confidence, Madam Speaker, that we on this side have the interests of our farmers. It's not a matter of talking. It's not a matter of saying about contradiction. It's a matter of implementing, Madam Speaker. And I want to say that I support the appropriation bill, the motion for 2017-2018. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You want to go there?
Honourable Member for Dennery North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise bill opposition benches for the first time in my short political and parliamentary career to contribute to a debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure, or what the average St. Lucian refers to as the budget debate. Notwithstanding that I rise from the opposition benches, Madam Speaker, but very critically and more significantly, I rise once again as the duly elected parliamentary representative for the progressively vibrant and purpose-driven constituency of Dennery North. It is an honor that was first bestowed upon me, Madam Speaker, at the historic elections of November 2011. It was then that the people of the Mabuya Valley bypassed 4 other candidates and in some cases rejected their ability to represent their interest in the parliament of this country. This covenant, Madam Speaker, was renewed on June 6, 2016, an election which the United Workers' Party won. We lost many of the seats that we held whilst in government. And I can recall, Madam Speaker, as the results came through on radio and television, many of our seats were falling. But in Dennery North, we stood firm and we survived the avalanche. Madam Speaker, The people of Dennery North have demonstrated over the years that they have an appreciation for good representation. Whether they are supporters of the United Workers' Party, that they've enjoyed as a constituency. Madam Speaker, we had a work program that covered every... I remember on the night as the results came through, first to be called and declared. The United Workers' Party candidate Jimmy Henry won. P5 came in, Madam Speaker, as the second polling division to be declared. Earlier, and Madam Speaker, the premature celebrations started until the figures from Daniel Riviere and Richford came in, and all celebrations had to be cut short, and the supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party had to be given room, had to be given space to celebrate. And so today, Madam Speaker, with your indulgence, I want to take the opportunity to once again express my most profound gratitude to the people of Oleon, Tamazo, Dibonnaire, Grand Rivière, Grand Ravine, Larissus, Gadet, Belmont, and Daniel Riviere. I am for the opportunity that they've given to me to represent them in this honorable house. Madam Speaker, the estimates of expenditure and revenue for 2017-2018, or what we refer to as the budget, can best be described as a bounce and drop budget or a hand-to-mouth budget. Hand-to-mouth in the sense, Madam Speaker, that it does not suggest that there will be any form of continuity or long-term programming to deal with the issues that confront our country today. For a government, after 10 short months, Madam Speaker, the number of mistakes, the number of missteps, the number of ministers who have demonstrated time and again that they are just not up to the task, Madam Speaker, is something that worries not just us on the opposition benches, but the entire populace. And it is time that the Prime Minister begins to understand that he is no longer functioning as the political leader of the United Workers' Party, but instead he is the Prime Minister for all of St. Lucia, irrespective of people's religious persuasions or political affiliation. The Prime Ministership comes with a tremendous responsibility. And whereas it is okay, or it appears to be okay for some of the members of his cabinet to posture and behave as if they have no care in the world for people who do not support them, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister's disposition ought to be separate and apart. Madam Speaker, the programs. Now, I remember when I was assigned to the Ministry of Youth, a young minister, very inexperienced in government. I always looked for the final figures under the various heads within my ministry. But I understood very, very early that not every figure you see on the books will actually translate into the implementation of projects. And it was the member for Choiseul who made the point earlier on that programs to be funded by bonds, and it's a point that was further accentuated by the member for Vieux North, that the programs to be funded by bonds are programs that you never certain will happen. And the reason is simple. You do not control the situation in the financial markets. And therefore you can never be guaranteed that your bonds and your instruments will find favor with those persons out there with the monies that you're trying to attract and the monies that you're trying to get to finance your program. In this country today, a lot of those programs will not be implemented. And so, Madam Speaker, I expect for there to be a lot of violated expectations from St. Lucians. I expect for a lot of people to be disappointed. And I am not one who's going to come here, Madam Speaker, and wish things that are not for the development of our country. I want to see St. Lucia do well, irrespective of who the Prime Minister is, and irrespective of who happens to be the parliamentary representative for Dennery and the other constituency. And Madam Speaker, I say this with all the sincerity that I can muster. But the government must understand that as an opposition, we have a legitimate stake in what is happening with respect to decision making and the way forward for our country. The Prime Minister, in very recent times, Madam Speaker, told the country that St. Lucia was broke. And I asked myself, where had the Prime Minister been all those years? That it is only now he is learning that the country is broke. And what he meant is that we do not have sufficient financial resources to execute the programs that will impact our people in a very positive way. And we said that to all of St. Lucia when we were in government. We called in the trade unions. We spoke to the churches. We called the youth groups. We engaged civil society organizations. And we told them what the situation was. And instead of joining forces with the government at the time, when you had an opportunity, instead, you saw a chance to score cheap political points. Instead of telling people the truth, you promised ching-ching in the pocket. Instead of telling people that the situation that confronted St. Lucia was not unique to St. Lucia, and that was on the backs of the people. That is what you said. And today, 10 months into government, you are singing a totally different tune. 10 months that things that in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados has had to send home more than 3,000 are now packing their bags in Barbados, looking for other places to invest their money because the situation is critical in Barbados. And so the situation is bad across the Caribbean. But what sets apart the Caribbean jurisdictions that will stay afloat from the ones that are going to sink is the quality of leadership that you have. And that is what we provided under the St. Lucia Labour Party government. And I made the point earlier, Prime Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, that yours is a job that ought to be taken more seriously. It cannot be politics. It cannot be the vision and the objectives of the United Workers' Party anymore for you. And whereas, from my vantage point, it will be extremely difficult for some members of the government to move away from the politics and assume an objective posture for the development of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister has no choice. And when you can remove $700,000 from the estimates for the National Trust and what you want to execute, and that must the Prime Minister, after the largest cabinet in the history of our country, the biggest cabinet wage bill ever to be paid, testing the managed departments and ministries, tokenism was at play. They were appointed as ministers, they get in the salary and the output. And if you are objective among yourselves, you will conclude in your quiet moments that there are a lot of persons in the cabinet who are woefully inadequate and cannot function as ministers. They are not able to function on the domestic front, and when they represent our country abroad, they report personal. And this is not targeted at any one individual, but that is what we have at the moment, and this is something we must address. We must understand that we are only players in this process for a time. The next 10, 15, 20 years, the majority of persons in here will no longer be parliamentary representatives. And what we want, is to leave that the next generation will be able to build on. And Madam Speaker, when a Prime Minister can equate the patrimony of our country to the credit rating, it is a sad state of affairs. And it is the same Prime Minister who said that a country should be run as a business. You have a CEO taking care of the business. And all CEOs are concerned about is the bottom line, the profit margin. And if they have to take decisions that are not popular just to increase profit, they will do it. A country cannot be likened to a business unless you are looking at cutting wastage, maximizing productivity, and things of that sort. But once you are going to equate the patrimony of your country to credit rating, I expect you to take decisions. I expect you to implement programs that will be inimical and dangerous and disadvantageous to poor people in this country. Madam Speaker, the reduction of subsidies on rice flour, etc. I remember when we took those decisions as a government, because we had tough decisions to make at the time. The member for Castries South East came in here, and I think, Madam Speaker, he was occupying the same seat that I'm occupying today, or maybe the one to my immediate left. and he told the Honorable House that he had encountered an old lady in Bexar. As a result of the reduction in the subsidies, the lady in Bexar could not have purchased not even a pound of rice. And that was backed up by another story told by the member for Mikunov, where she encountered a lady at the cash register who was short of $2, I think, at the time, and the lady had to take back the groceries because she didn't have $2. And I think it was the member for Labrie who said to her at the time, "You mean you didn't give the lady the $2? And there, Madam Speaker, yeah, what do you say? Mikunov, yes, Mikunov. And there, Madam Speaker, they chided us because we did not remove the subsidies, you know. We only reduced on the subsidies because we were confronted by a very difficult situation which called for difficult and tough decisions to be made. But today, the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, has been challenged by the Leader of the Opposition to come out and tell the country that the items that have been zero rated for VAT and have been exempted, that you are not going to remove them from the basket. And Madam Speaker, through you, I will have to call for the protection of the Speaker. And I understand your exuberance, Mr. Prime Minister, but the executive and the legislature are not the same. The Speaker is in charge. So,
and a point of on a clarification. Who's reduced the subsidies on rice and flour and sugar? So I don't know where the member from Dennery North is saying that. There's been no announcement of that at all. In fact, what I said in my presentation is that the prices remain the same below the market price. That's exactly what I said. Oh, okay. My apologies.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I said we, the St. Lucia Labour Party government, had tough. When we did, we were chided. But we were not afraid of making the tough decisions that we had to in the interest of this country. But the same persons who chided us and who criticized us, today they are the ones looking to said that we were going to exempt. So, Madam Speaker, we had no money to speak about when we were in government, but with a limited budget, we were able to build bridges. We were able to build schools. We were able to light up playing fields. We were able to provide laptop computers to the children of St. Lucia. We were able to give bursaries. We were able to increase the contribution to pensioners. We were able to provide youth and sports equipment to young Speaker. And Madam Speaker, all of what I've spoken about can be verified, can be checked, and the record is there for all to see. Madam Speaker, I now turn my attention to the Department of Youth Development and Sports, which I think is identified in the estimates as Head 54. With a total budget of $7.2 million, $5.6 million as recurrent expenditure, and a capital allocation of $1.6 million. With that amount, Madam Speaker, Youth Development as a line item under that head gets $170,000 through the Beckwith International Leadership Development Program, commonly known to people in the ministry as the BUILD. And the objective of the BUILD, as I would have stated in the previous budget, is really to train young people, Madam Speaker. And when the BUILD was implemented, it was really meant to train young leaders across communities in St. Lucia who would have assisted with, among other things, St. Lucia's hosting of the Commonwealth Youth Games at the time, but we know what the situation was with the Commonwealth Youth Games. And so I'm happy to see that the allocation has been retained, notwithstanding that St. Lucia will no longer be hosting the Commonwealth Youth Games. Madam Speaker, it is a sad day to see that the autonomy that was given to youth development and sports as a separate entity has been taken away, and that the portfolios of youth development and sports have been lost in a cluster arrangement where adequate attention, in my opinion, is not being placed on that particular portfolio. Madam Speaker, Sports equipment, $100,000. And that money is expected to be raised through bond financing. I made the point earlier, the member for Vieux North made the point earlier, as well as the member for Choiseul. The market is not very favorable for the sale of bonds, and so I am not very optimistic that the amount to be raised for sports equipment will be raised. And in any event, Madam Speaker, even if $100,000 is raised for the procurement of sports equipment, that can never be sufficient. $100,000 is not even enough to outfit St. Lucia's team for the Windward Islands second. The Ministry of Youth Development and Sports or the department will have to find monies from other sources. The lighting of recreational facilities, I noticed that there's a grant amount of $762,016 to be sourced from the Republic of China, Taiwan. And normally, Madam Speaker, from experience, once you have grant funding, and in particular grant funding from the ROCT, more often than not, that money is expected to come through, even if at times there may be delays. I recall in last year's estimate, an amount of $2.7 million was allocated for the lighting of recreational facilities. And during that time, we had earmarked 4 playing fields for lighting, namely the Canris playing field, the Dennery playing field, the Foasso playing field, and the Choiseul playing field. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Madam Speaker. But I am almost certain that late last year, the Taiwanese embassy did present a check to the government of St. Lucia to execute the projects on the playing fields that I mentioned. But all that is reflected in the estimates this year is $762,000 for the lighting of recreational facilities. And based on experience and the work programs you would have executed before, this amount can only service 1 playing field. Madam Speaker, the lighting fixtures have been installed on the Canris playing field. The lighting fixtures were installed and awaiting connection on the Dennery playing field to the Taiwanese government making the monies available. Were Commonwealth Youth Games. But it got to a stage when the Commonwealth Games Federation that St. Lucia could not, because of financial difficulties, host the Commonwealth Youth Games. And so the money that was in the Sink Fund was used to light up the 2 playing fields that I mentioned, namely Canris and Dennery South, with the view that when the Taiwanese check is made available, the money will be replaced at the National Lotteries Authority. But today, Madam Speaker, only 1 project is reflected by way of amount. It does not speak to which of the playing fields will be addressed. But I can recall very clearly, and there's documentation to substantiate what I am saying, that the Foasso playing field, the Canris playing field, the Dennery playing field, and the Choiseul playing field were supposed to have been lit under this particular program. So, Madam Speaker, these would have complemented the 4 fields that we would have done. Philip Masley, Marsha, Ancillary, and Larissus in the Mabuya Valley. The National Coaching Program, $69,501. Now, Madam Speaker, I have tried in my quiet moments to decipher what can we do with $69,000. I'm inclined to believe that maybe this is an amount to pay for the services of a coach who was recruited not too long ago. The Elite Athletes and Talent Identification Program, $500,000. Again, this is supposed to be funded through bonds. I need not reiterate the situation with bonds as it relates to our fiscal position. And so, Madam Speaker, I do not expect much money, much from that allocation to be raised to finance it in its entirety. So, the budget for the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports is pretty much the same as last year's, with a few minor variations. And so, Madam Speaker, the 7.2 million allocated for sports can never be adequate to sustain any semblance of proper youth development and sports programming. And so, as happened under the St. Lucia Labour Party government, I expect the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, or the Department of Youth Development and Sports if you prefer, to get the bulk of its funding from the National Lotteries Authority. And the National Lotteries Authority is an entity that was created by an Act of Parliament. And it states, Madam Speaker, that all monies generate. So the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports is in a very unique position. There's a lot of what we were able to do. The playing fields that we were able to light up. The playing fields that we were able to surface. The courts that we were able to rehabilitate. The equipment that we were able to deliver and distribute in schools and across communities. The support that we were able to give to elite athletes. The community pavilions that we were able to construct. The community programs that we were able to fund. The bulk of the funding came from the National Lotteries Authority. We constructed community pavilions and changing rooms in canneries, Ancillary, Marigot, Fonsault, Larissos. We worked on multi-purpose courts, Corinth, Babonneau, Bellevue, Vieux Fort, Montgouge, Vieux Fort Town, Tiroche Castries, and so on. But Madam Speaker, it was very, very disturbing when the member for Gros-Islet came into this honorable house not too long ago, and he tried to give not just members in this honorable chamber the impression that some done wrong with monies from can be substantiated. Collects by way of revenue $1,000. Roughly $200,000 in the form of license fees from CBN, Canadian banknotes, and roughly $400,000 from K with the VLTs or the video lottery terminals you have in the shops all across St. Lucia. CBN is the company that deals with Super 6, Scratch, Lucky Free, and those games. And on an average, Madam Speaker, the National Lotteries Authority would net more. So that after elections, when the ministers in the cluster went in and they said that the National Lotteries Authority was broke, and I remember the member for Ancillary Canneries telling me that the Lotteries Authority is broke, there's no money. What did we do with the money? And he was asking me that at a time when the National Lotteries Authority ought to have been the most liquid of all the statutory corporations and entities that we have in this country. Madam Speaker, the monies of the National Lotteries Authority are saved at two commercial banks, the Bank of St. Lucia and Scotiabank. One of these accounts, Madam Speaker, of the accounts of the National Lotteries Authority, one account is referred to as the minister's account. And it is referred to as the minister's account for only one reason. It is not money belonging to the minister. It is not money meant to be spent to benefit the minister. But it is an account that will help expedite funding decisions for sports programs and situations as they arise. So that when the member for Micoud North can come with a proposal at the last minute and ask for $7,000 for the Gail Rigobert netball competition in Micoud North, I will not ask her to report to the directive to the lotteries that they have to facilitate that for the honorable member. And the same was done for the Laclery Independence football competition. And when you have a competition, a table competition on Good Friday in Forestier, it is the same process that we use to provide the funding. So when they give you the impression that lotteries money was used in a manner that was not acceptable, Madam Speaker, it is the Prime Minister who used the word very recently, calling very renowned citizens of this country hypocrites. Who are the real hypocrites today? Who are the hypocrites today? Who are the hypocrites today? And Madam Speaker, yes, on a Good Friday, the same day you can't get nominated to contest elections. It's the same elected members. I don't care which party you represent. I respect elected members. And that if there are resources at my disposal as a minister, I will go out of my way to provide support and to help. And I don't expect you to reciprocate, because I've heard the comments. I don't expect you to reciprocate, because my people will cry. You have said that they're going to cry. Then enough people are expected to cry, because in the majority, they voted for the St. Lucia Labour Party in the elections of 2016. And there will be no political fallout according to the member for Gros-Islet. You know why? Because again, the majority are supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party. So when you want to create the impression that I, or under my ministerial watch, lottery money or monies belonging to the National Lotteries Authority was squandered, you need to think again. That is not me, that is not my character, and these are not the things I condone. And that is very important, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that all of what was criticized in terms of what the Lotteries Authority's money was used for will not be repeated. So that when Leonne Spencer is in Norway, Helsinki, alone, representing St. Lucia without the requisite staff, the psychologist, the coach, the doctor, and she's competing against internationals who have a full contingent of support staff with them, I have no regrets, Madam Speaker, in causing the National Lotteries Authority to wire money up here to provide a comfort level that will make her represent our country to the best of her ability. And that is what I use lotteries money for. So don't come here and make it seem as if somebody did something. When you peruse the records of the lotteries, I did not refurbish bus shelters in Babono with lottery money. I did not give tuition support to party hacks to go to university. That's not what I used it for. I found those there in the records, but that's not my politics. I came to correct what was wrong. I never came. So it is wrong and it is unfair to give the impression that somebody was doing something wrong with monies. And I understand why very early in the configuration of the cabinet, people were beginning to fight. There were squabbles. Who wanted lotteries? There's something at lotteries you think that you can benefit from. Devon Nick on social media, United Pack on social media, as if to suggest, but as they say in cricket, I know where my off stump is. I will not play at that. That's a wide. You have to be a little more direct if you want to engage me on this subject. That is not me. And many of you there know the smell of corruption. Even if it doesn't come from your person, you're close enough to it. And I want you to check yourselves, and then you'll understand precisely what I'm trying to say. So, Madam Speaker, with the time left, there's a lot I need to say about the constituency of Denry North. Denry North is a very, very special part of St. Lucia. The people, as I alluded to earlier on, Madam Speaker, on the 6th of June, and they decided that they were going to, and there was one key factor for that decision being made by the people. And that is they were satisfied with the performance of the government, they were satisfied with the performance of the representative. And as I go through the constituency, a lot of the party hacks, Madam Speaker, I'm going to tie every word I speak about my constituency with the different heads in the estimate. And people ask you, qui ça Sean a fait? Qui ça Leba a fait? What have I done? Il n'a fait rien. He did nothing. I can tell you one thing. When you're politically blind and you're biased, it's a very, 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 very bad thing to combat, you know. When people cannot see objectively. When people will not appreciate good for what it is. When they have to champion the cause of their party, it can make very smart people look stupid. It can make very educated people look ordinary. I am focused. I know where I'm heading. I am here to represent the best interests of the people of Denry North. Moi, à Caille Parlement pour représenter Jean Denry North. Jean Denry North qui travaille les figues de l'argent. Pour mener l'argent figue dans un pays ça. Pour faire Rosodam. Pour Bill Rodney Bay. Pour faire Waterfront. Pour faire Chimay Tunnel. C'est l'argent figue nous qui fait. C'est l'argent figue nous qui paye docteur, et teacher. Et si Rodia, figue pas ça y est. Moi, pas ni pièce apologique à point. Si moi, en tout un gouvernement, et que moi, point, et que moi, demandé, et que moi, gourmet pour ça, moi, quoi, c'est moun Denry North la bousin. We will not be bystanders in the national development process anymore. Prior to 2011, 5 years, everywhere in St. Lucia you went, there was a Taiwanese project happening. Denry North, the hard-working people of Denry North who had made their contribution and given a fair effort to the development of this country had to watch. And everywhere else that something happening and we're not getting. So that when I come in this parliament, or I happen to sit in a cabinet, I will grab with both hands. And the people of Denry North will be the ones benefiting. Well, you know about that because you are with people who have that tendency. Madame, qui ça déjà fait Denry North? Vous savez qui ça m'a raison? Concrete road phases 1 and 2 on Leonne Grand-Vieux. A Dibonnet Bridge and Road, main road. Courts for the children of the Grand-Vieux daycare who were sleeping on the floor. New Village Road, concrete road from the highway way to the back of the Richmond Combined School in New Village. An enhanced school feeding program at the I have to campaign because you have a tracking device on me. School feeding, well, I don't know if you tapped my phone yet, but I have to campaign. An enhanced school feeding program at the Richford Combined School. In Lower Grand Ravine, Madam Speaker, we were able to build a brand new concrete road next to the Mumbellies leading to Sophia's house. In Grand Ravine, leading to the Charles family, a brand new concrete road. In Grand Ravine, higher up next to Rodney's Hall, a brand new concrete road. We completed rehabilitation of the Grand Ravine playing field. The Richmond Larisso sidewalk, a project that is very, very close to my heart, Madam Speaker. That particular stretch of road, Madam Speaker, has been the scene of many accidents where people, churchgoers, elderly, school children have had to compete for space on the road with vehicular traffic. And there have been many instances, Madam Speaker, where the ambulance has come into contact with people, well, vehicles, and the ambulances had to be sourced to take them to the hospital. We have had to rehabilitate the Lapel playing field. We've done a drainage project in Apatat, Lapel. Drainage works in Gadet. The fencing of the Gadet daycare. Equipment and financial support for the Gadet daycare. More than $4 million worth of upgrade works at the Larissus playing field. Drainage in Montego Bay, Oleon. A brand new concrete road in New Jack. A brand new concrete road to the back of the Oleon post office. Footpaths in Oleon. Lower Denver Riviera next to Adol, we were able to build a concrete road there, Madam Speaker. A bridge on a road to Miss Adeline, or a gentleman who's better known as Betlamp. We did that, Madam Speaker. Austin Hill Road Phase 1, and I've said before that for about 10 years, the Austin Hill Road was on the work program of the then Ministry of Communications and Works, as well as the Ministry of Infrastructure. And it was a problem. It was a traumatic experience for banana farmers and persons who lived at the top of the community. Soon as we got into office, in quick time, we were able to complete phase 1 of that road. And phase 2, Madam Speaker, the contracts were already signed, and there was a change of government, and we do not know the fate of the contractors in terms of whether they will be allowed to continue or whether the contracts will be taken away from them and be given to supporters or persons whom they perceive to be supporters of their party. Drainage and retaining wall at Austin Hill. River wall and river stabilization in Fompiti. The Upper Belmont concrete road. Central Belmont, a concrete road. Lower Belmont in the Varsity area, a concrete road. Reconstruction of the Denyer Riviera Combined School. Medical assistance to close to 100 constituents. CXC payments for the children of parents who could not have afforded. And there was always a double whammy with that, Madam Speaker. Once you are in a situation where the child cannot pay CXC, rest assured that same parent will come back to you because of his or her inability. And the current vice principal of the Clinton Mason, because as the parents came into my constituency office, one at 2 o'clock, another at 4, one the following day, just to save time and to make this a more efficient process, I used to call the school and ask, who are the children who cannot pay? And I did not take into consideration whether they were from Denry North or other parts of the East Coast. I facilitated those I could have facilitated. Over 300 scholarships and tuition support packages, Madam Speaker. Although in recent times, when the allocation came from the SSDF for back-to-school assistance, it was a losing candidate and his operatives handling that particular package. I never saw it. I had absolutely no input in terms of who deserved and who should have gotten. But that is not my politics. And every MP in this house today who was in opposition will tell you that when they had to deal with me, I never, not for once, did I disrespect them or did I ignore whatever request they brought before me. I don't necessarily have to expect you to reciprocate, but I am not like that, Madam Speaker. That is not me. So, Madam Speaker, I have responded to all the persons who ask, qui ça ils a fait? Qui ça change a fait? Ça c'est tac, c'est ba la moi a fait. Et la ni pli moi a fait. That moi quitter pour l'autre debate en kai consit. Madam Speaker, Head 41, Agriculture, Fisheries, Natural Resources and Cooperatives. Agriculture is a vital component of the local economy.
Honorable Member, you have 15 more minutes within which to complete your presentation.
Is it 50, Madam Speaker? Thank you, Madam Speaker. It has done wonders for the development of our country, and more specifically for the Dennery North constituency. Fig ek agricole, j'ai fait bon bail by pays cette liste à qui passé. Ek jik un jour qu'aujourd'hui, Fig ka still fait bon bagay, ka mette l'argent en poche et ka les tab Jean en constituency moi et puis l'autre place en cette liste. I represent an agricultural constituency, one that has made a substantial contribution to the development of this country, and I alluded to that earlier on. Madam Speaker, I am aware, after having perused the estimates of last year and this year, and after having had discussions with senior personnel in the Ministry of Agriculture, that there were programs earmarked for the Mabuya Valley that have been removed or redirected to other parts of this country. And you know what is most painful about this, Madam Speaker? This is happening at a time when we have a constituent and somebody who has a vested political interest in the Mabuya Valley sitting inside the cabinet and allowing that to happen without raising objection. L'année programme agricole qui nous a parlé about, qui est supposé fait à Dennery North, Madam Speaker. Mais quand le gouvernement ça l'a venu, il a tiré ces programmes ça là, et quand pile ces programmes ça a calé en l'autre commune en cette liste, en particulier Babono. Et ça qui a trois cas c'est moins plus about ça, nous n'ayons un homme qui nie l'intérêt politique en Dennery North, qui a assis dans le cabinet, qui a gardé ces bails ça a fait, et qui passe à faire rien pour empêcher ou pour dire, well, tout par après tout quitter Yondé et quitter your bail, man. And Madam Speaker, this is what happens. And so I am not surprised when I see lump sums that are not adequately broken down to reflect the programs that pièce là un gouvernement qui a dépensé pour aider femmes africaines. Yon c'est moun qui a toujours vinn de supporter programme ça c'est moi. Puis moi a pile moun dans constituency moi. Qui ça qui vote ban moi, même ko ça qui pas vote ban moi qui a planté figue et qui un jour aujourd'hui qui dépend les figues. So pièce support gouvernement flambeau, ou pièce gouvernement qui bail femmes africaines. Ça c'est bail moi qui supporter Madam Speaker. Et ça c'est bail moi qui dit la vérité. The Dennery Water Redevelopment Project, 10.5 million, still on the head 41, agriculture, fisheries, natural resources and cooperatives. Madam Speaker, situation de l'eau à Dennery North, c'est moi a parlé about toutes les mois venir à Parlement. Tout partout moi aller moi parler about situation de l'eau. Et ça c'est un problème nous avons pour combien d'années. Mais nous pour première fois en gros démarche qu'a tapé point pour adresser problème ça là. Et aujourd'hui je voulais prendre l'occasion pour y mettre en pile monde qui a fait possible pour programme ça là qu'a tapé quoi implémenter. Je voulais y mettre membre parlement pour Vieux South qui c'est le premier ministre. Là moi aller parler avec moi dit la situation glo avalia. Il parlait et puis membre pour affaires étrangères en cabinet là. Ça c'est membre parlement pour la Boui qui c'était ministre qui a responsabilité pour external affairs, $1 million. $5 million. So c'est là en sorti. Mais là il fait study un ministre Dr. Fletcher en tant que c'est sustainable development. Yo ouais là ça pas gagné assez. So we had an application before the Caribbean Development Bank. There was a change of government, and to your credit, Prime Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, and the member for Babono, the project was upheld, and the project has started, and I am relieved that once and for all, the people of Dennery North will be getting safe drinking water. Madam Speaker, ça me parle, c'est pour moun venir ici et faire cette ici quoi, c'est yo qui responsabilité qui conseil pour la petite yo qui fait projet à café. You stop many projects that you will find were already in the pipeline. Many projects were stopped. But I'm very grateful on behalf of my constituents that you've decided to stick to the water project. Madam Speaker, Head 47 Physical Planning. PROUD is a program that was implemented by the St. Lucia Labour Party. The only community has been under the radar of Proud for some time. On y a une situation au Lyon que c'est Kaila fait de manière qu'on yo combler ensemble. Et que mouni belgo Kai qui n'y a chay valet. Mais yo pas ni papier terre et que yo passe à servir Kaila qu'on valet pour aller devant banque pour prendre loan pour voir issue l'école ou pour acheter pièces bagay yo besoin. Et c'est pour raison ça qui fait Proud aller au Lyon bonnet depuis le commencé. But it is proving to be very problematic and it is time consuming. But I'm hoping that soon from today the Proud project will bring the sort of relief to the people of Olio as we anticipate. Two other communities in my constituency, Madam Speaker, still under Head 47 physical planning, are Belmont and Grand Ravine. The chief are occupying lands belonging to the continue and that some effort will be made, Madam Speaker, to address the situation with respect to those persons. Mounikai, en l'état gouvernement Belmont et puis Guavin, même qu'on au Lyon, et que pas ni papier terre, et que passe après pièce loan pour service de Kaila pour prendre loan. Et que moi commande gouvernement pour adresser ça parce que nous avons commencé discussion, les montants en cabinet. Et que moi un support gouvernement, Madam Speaker, les venir pour ça. Madam Speaker, Head 53, Health and Wellness, Primary Healthcare Services Program. Health Center Larisus, Madam Speaker, the Larisus Health Center was destroyed by fire. Patient records were destroyed and equipment destroyed. In the budget, after consultation with then Prime Minister Dr. Anthony, an allocation of $371,000 was in the budget. And it was not money that had to be raised for bonds, grant funding for the Larisus Health Center. What did you all do with that money? Was that money used to pay consultants on the St. Jude's project? Was that money used to finance traveling for ministers? Because before you got into the third quarter, you had already wiped out the travel budget. What did you do with that money? And in addition to not doing the project, your power health center et puis la hanou qui était là. Yo ka venir kay consit rodia et puis un budget neuf. Et quoi dit reconstruction of Larisus Health Center, là ni $0 and 0 cents. Les pas zo qui met la là. Zo hen la là pour un health center. Zo tiye. Ex jodia zo ka venir dit ou pas mettre pièce là. Et vous savez qui ça problème là yé? Grand moun gadet dernier vieux au Lyon ti Larisus qui était ka aller Larisus pour un docteur à chama yoni pour aller jic wi fond. Et ce docteur a complain Madam Speaker because he pas right et qui pas bon en pièce qualité health practice pour une session at the rich fund. Madam Speaker, again there is somebody from Denry North who makes the rounds, who gives contracts on behalf of the government, who implements projects and takes photos to put on social media as if he is the parliamentary rep and you sit in cabinet and you allow that. And if there can be 5 people in the cabinet from Denry North, I'll be happy because at the end of the day, if the service or service to the people is our primary focus, all of us should be happy when something is done for the community. Madam Speaker, I knew it was a sad day today when I saw the member for Denry South of all persons providing speaking or coaching somebody in Parliament in terms of how to deliver a budget and presentation. You found your voice. Continue to interrupt the best you can. Madam Speaker, Head 43, Infrastructure, Ports and Energy. So that the Larisus Road has been completed and the amount reflected in the estimates is just payment for what was known as a finance build project. Yo di, let me faire chimer Larisus là, that me pas by contract pour Jean Larisus. Mais yo pas open that contract là c'est de ça ou créer a finance bill. Ça nous mean pas finance bill. Finance bill mean that yon moun ne pour venir puis $700,000 pour faire chimer. Gouvernement pas mettre pièce là en chimer. Ou ka faire chimer. Ou ka mettre là ou ka faire chimer. Et peut-être yon l'année, 2 l'année pour faire chimer, gouvernement ka commencer payer. Now qui manière moins ça bail un moun contract. En l'air l'argent yon moun. Il a prêté en banque pèse $1 million pour faire chimer. Ou quoi moins ça aller et que l'autre moun bail contract en contract l'autre moun non. Qu'est-ce moun qui ne bon tête pas faire ça. Mais yo a une chance pour les politiques. Et so yo di moun that mo pa bay moun contract enrichment resource. Madam Speaker, the Richmond Ring Road has been a problematic road for some time.
Honourable Member, you have, just to remind you, you have 5 more minutes now within which to complete your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Richmond Ring Road has been a sore point for some time now. And the problem we have there, Madam Speaker, is that the road is below the level of the water. And it makes it very difficult for us to rehabilitate this road. But the staff from the Ministry of Infrastructure, although they don't tour the constituency with me, they choose to do it with other people, Madam Speaker. The staff that I would have engaged prior to the elections, I am hoping that they will continue to work diligently to ensure that we come up with a solution for that particular problem. The Austin Hill Road, Madam Speaker, as I said, phase 1 would have been completed. I'm hoping that we can get phase 2 completed in quick time. Local government, culture and creative industries, head 57. Madam Speaker, council was elected. I had very little input. When written to submit a name, I submitted the name. I was told that I had missed the deadline. The St. Lucia Labour Party took appropriate action, and we had to consult our lawyers, and in record time, my nominee was appointed to the Denry North Constituency Council. Madam Speaker, there are a group of very professional people serving on council, notwithstanding the fact that I did not select them, but there are quite a few hard-working professionals whom I believe have the interests of the community at heart, and I have pledged my support to them, and I'm willing to work with them. But the one thing I will not stand for is when they take the losing candidate of the United Workers' Party and get him to posture as the rep. I did say to the Minister for Local Government once at a function, to acknowledge these things. She was my permanent secretary not too long before the election. Of councillors. I am at the head table with the member for Denry South, quite rightly so, the parish priest and the permanent secretary. And then she brings the losing candidate to the head table. And the president of the Senate is in the audience. So I asked, what is the individual doing there? If you want to recognize government officials, then the president of the Senate, who is a much higher ranking officer, should be at the head table too. I did not walk away, as I said, because that was the first outing. Any opportunity or any attempt to try and derail my efforts as parliamentary rep or not give me what I believe I deserve in that capacity, I will do what I have to do. Madam Speaker, CDP, a lot has been said about CDP in the news, but I'm still very optimistic, given the fact that the member for Castries Southeast alone is presiding over $102 million in the budget. I am very optimistic that given his record of equity, that he will look at Denry North in a very favorable manner, and that some of the projects to be executed on the CDP will be executed. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for your patience and your indulgence. I want to thank members on both sides of the House for your cooperation. And very importantly, Madam Speaker, and most importantly, I want to thank God for the strength to be able to continue to discharge my responsibilities in this Parliament as the member for Denry North. I know it will be a very difficult journey, and that if the elections are called as that Denry North will once again support the St. Lucia Labour Party. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you, and I want to wish everyone a pleasant evening.
Social justice, empowerment, youth development, sports, culture, and local government.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the motion before the House this evening. But before I make my contribution to this debate, permit me, Madam Speaker, to first give thanks and praise to God and to the even-handed, fair-minded people of the constituency of Grosile. Madam Speaker, they are the most discerning and just voters you will find anywhere in this country. The wonderful decided to settle the injustice that occurred in 2011 and that the courts had not settled. Madam Speaker, the People's Court spoke in 2016 and the People's Court spoke emphatically. Madam Speaker, I'm here because I have won evidence. I have every intention, Madam Speaker, to justify that vote of confidence placed in me by the wonderful people of the constituency of Grosile. Madam Speaker, I am part of a cluster of ministries. The ministries are represented under my cluster are equity, social justice, empowerment, youth development, sports, local government, culture, and creative industries. I will attempt to address that in the estimates pertaining to equity, social justice, and empowerment, as well as local government, culture, and creative industries. And while contrary to what was said by the member who spoke, the Department of Youth Development and Sport, the Ministry of Youth Development and Sport, is very much a prominent feature in this cluster, but that department will be addressed and handled, I expect, by the member for Dennery South. Madam, we have earmarked for local government and culture some $32,234,800. Madam Speaker, a significant in the form of grants and contributions will go toward funding the St. Lucia Events Corporation that was created by Cabinet to undertake the activities as part of the Summer Festival, or as it is commonly called, Soleil. On the capital expenditure, we have some $3,057,813. Madam Speaker, if you would permit me, I will quickly go through the capital expenditure to give an idea of some of the programs and projects that will be dealt with by the Department of Local Government, Culture, and Creative Industries. Under local government, the Soufrière Enhancement Program, that is the town square in Soufrière, will be tackled, and there is of the square into a usable space in keeping with the open concept layout, and the amount represents that is funds received. Also on the local government, we have for the Grosile Human Resource. This is a center that is near completion, but the allocation will go toward dealing with the installation and construction of an elevator, because we anticipate that the design to the upper floor. In the design of that Human Resource Development Center, Madam Speaker, there was a cistern that was left in to correct this though this cistern will not be under the foundation of that building, we'll build a cistern nearby and harvest the water coming from the roof, water from the roof of the nearby library and Grosile preschool. Madam Speaker, that is very important for the simple fact that if you were to examine the infrastructure of Grosile presently, you would find that this is the most suitable disaster-resistant building, and in the event of hurricane or other natural disaster, that is a place where we can house our residents who may require shelter. And in so doing, we took into account that very often when there is a disaster, we usually have a problem with our water supply. And so if we can have the self-contained supply of water, that will go a long ways of the people who would have moved to that shelter. Under normal circumstances, Madam Speaker, we expect that the harvesting of water from the roof of those buildings will go a long way in reducing the cost of operation of that center. There is also an allocation of $300,000 for furniture and equipment for HRDCs, and the opening of the Grosley Human Resource Center, some furniture will be required, as well as for the Sarot Human Resource Development Center. Under culture and creative industries, we are going to take a look at the Cultural Center in Castries, because there is a need for revisiting the electrical wiring at the National Cultural Center. So we have made an allocation of $91,110 for that purpose. There is also an allocation of $200,000 for the development of the creative industries. Again, we are hoping that this amount will represent an allocation that will be distributed among at least 10 small artisans in the creative industries to provide them with assistance to grow their business within the creative industries. Madam Speaker, I will speak in more detail to the policies and programs that will be implemented during the course of 2017-2018 under those headings when we come to the appropriation bill in a couple of weeks' time. I quickly move on to the Department of Equity, Social Justice and Empowerment. That allows salaries and on the cap to give figure for 2000, but the figure in 2018 is actually $22,607,165,541,000. Under the Madam Speaker, the Social Justice and Empowerment, the Community After School Program. Madam Speaker, this is a program for youth at risk to foster social change. The appropriation bill, where I will outline the various communities where that money will be spent. But for parliamentary representatives who are here, who have ongoing programs, I give you the assurance that all of those programs will be continued. Recognize that $500,000, Madam Speaker, is not a whole lot. Hoping that Syrians will go a long way through soliciting assistance from the business sector, the private sector in their constituencies, and hopefully we can enrich those programs what has been allocated by government. And let me just quickly, while I said I would go into the details later, let me just quickly indicate that the programs currently existing are in Fuasho, Monrepo, Wilton's Yard, Gara, Moshi, Cicero, and I noticed some constituencies coming up a few times here, Bel-Air, Soufre, Pont-Saint-Jacques, La Maz in Sozel, and Belleville, Vieux, as well as the Vieux Town. The provision of the $500,000, Madam Speaker, has been made to provide for stipend, material, equipment, and in some cases catering, because as you know, very often some of the young people who attend those programs are from poor families, and we want to ensure that we provide for them in terms of diet and nutrition. Madam Speaker, under Equity, Social Justice and Empowerment, we implement the Basic Needs Trust Fund programs, and in the process of implementing, on the BNTF 7, there is an allocation of $8,710,984. And let me just quickly indicate, Madam Speaker, much of that allocation comes from grant funding from the CDB, $376,500. Government of St. Lucia will provide some $1.3 million. Will come under the broad heading of basic community access, and that simply means projects such as footpaths and so on, and drainage enhancement. And Madam Speaker, you know, with climate change, we have experienced quite a lot of severe weather events, which has caused flooding in many of our communities. So we are hoping that that intervention will go a long way in alleviating some of those in those flood-prone areas in particular. We also are going to deal with water and sanitation system as well as risk. On the program, we have an allocation of $2,074,717, again with $1.6 million provided by the CDB and the 460 projects to be completed under that program again fall under the general heading of basic access and drainage enhancement, as well as education and human resource development and youth at risk. We are also going to do some work in the area of water and sanitation system enhancement to ensure that we bring clean pipe-borne water to many of the communities who still are without such a basic fundamental amenity up to this day. Madam Speaker, the Columbet vending and viewing facility in Soufrière will be completed, because this is a project that has started, but we have allocated some $300,000 for the completion of that facility. And out of that sum that we have here, we're going to complete the retaining wall, as well as provide a comfort station for the patrons of that facility. Madam Speaker, I believe it is some every 10 years or so we carry out a country poverty assessment. And we are in the process of doing so once again. And for this CPA, we have allocated $526,500 to carry out that survey, which provides to departments such as ours vital information to guide us in policy making as to where our resources are most appropriately directed, or should be most appropriately directed. And this is a very important tool to tell us where we are, how much progress we are making in poverty alleviation, and in terms of improving the livelihood and quality of life of our people. So this $526,500, I'm hoping, will complete the process of that CPA and hopefully find very useful the contents of that report when it is presented. Madam Speaker, the controversial home care program, I refer here to what some people refer to as the NICE program. The home care program was, up to recent time, part of the NICE project in the office of the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, if you revisit the records of the Senate, you will find that from the inception of that program, I have always been against the program. Not against the programs that exist under that project, but I was against the fundamental principle that we did not need another entity to execute those programs. Madam Speaker, I am one who believes in maximizing the limited resources that we have, and I have demonstrated that, because when I was Minister of Social Transformation between the period 2006-2011, you would recall perhaps, Madam Speaker, and the records are there to show, that I found in the ministry that there would be savings realized if we were to join the Basic Needs Trust Fund with the Poverty Reduction Fund to create a new entity that we now call the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, the SSDF, that there would be much savings realized, and we'll be able to maximize the resources by using some of the savings that would accrue from not having to finance two administrative structures, not having to finance two logistical structures, and that money could be directed to the people who most deserve and need that money to assist them. And so we formed the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, only to realize additional funds that were made available to go into the programs of those social entities. I am saying that I still stand by that principle, and I argued back then, and I argue now, that the St. Lucia Social Development Fund is in a position and can implement the programs that are being implemented by NICE, because after all, Madam Speaker, they are all social programs and would rightfully be under the Department of Equity. When I made the statements I made about the benefits that could be derived and realized from consolidating, from streamlining, from cutting off the unnecessary fat that we have, and I called a spade, I identified the project for what it was. I know there were many who were upset, but then again, that should not surprise me, because it is a long time that I've been hearing that the truth offends. Mind you, Madam Speaker, no one said that I told an untruth. They were just unhappy about the fact that I said it. Madam Speaker, the funds will go to finance some 365 employees. Out of this, there will be salaries for 311 home attendants, that is the people who provide the care to the people who need that assistance, especially the elderly. And there will be 54 home help supervisors, that is the people who ensure that those programs are actually carried out properly and done at the required standard. So let me just indicate once again that the home care program continues. The home care program will continue, but it will be done under the auspices of the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, where I believe it rightfully belongs. Because let us not forget, which is another point that I made, and all of those points were missed because, of course, they didn't serve people's political expedience. I made the point that prior to the establishment of NICE, the SSDF had already begun executing a similar program, and they had already trained 150 people who were capable of delivering the service that is needed in that home care program. Some politicians chose, Madam Speaker, to make a political spectacle of the program, and people were calling meetings and talking about my workers and so on. But let me just inform you, Madam Speaker, I can speak for Grosile. I carried out some research just yesterday because I knew I'd be making a contribution on that subject in this Honorable House, perhaps today or tomorrow, only to find out that some of the people, even some of those who are on television making the ill-advised comments instigated by politicians, are part of the program in Grosile today. Madam Speaker, there are other programs of the NICE project that continue. I am aware that there were a number of people who were hired in various ministries, and I imagine, Madam Speaker, that was a clever way, some thought, of disguising the increase in numbers in the public service. Perhaps that was a tactic, a diversionary tactic for the IMF or whoever it is who will be making an assessment of our actual financial situation, but made by the government of St. Lucia. Whether you hide it on the NICE or you hire them, that is what they are. And so I just want to give St. Lucians the assurance that these are not social programs, so they are not under my portfolio. But I want to assure St. Lucians that many of those people remain where they were, only that they are part of the mainstream public service system, an advantage to those people, people who can now face the financial institutions, people who can now face the business houses and be in a position to negotiate loans and hire purchase. So the wickedness that we talk about, that members of this government are perpetrating against poor people in St. Lucia, that is what they're talking about, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've always said in my political life, many have tried to define me, but I will be defined by my works. And the people know me too well. They know me better than them, so they can tell the people. They cannot tell the people who I am. Madam Speaker, Hummingbird Beach project, another project in the community of Soufrière. We have allocated some $1,062,461 to fund the justice and empowerment, we will be allowing the Soufre Development Foundation to be the implementing agency while we do the supervision of that project. Again, more details will be provided, Madam Speaker, I'm sure not only by myself, but the member for Soufre, almost certain may want to elaborate a little on that project. Madam Speaker, the project called Youth Empowerment for Life project, we have allocated some $3.2 million, or roughly $3.3 million program among youth, and it targets vulnerable communities, especially in the Castries Basin. However, Madam Speaker, we are hoping to draw in some of the other deprived communities, such as ancillary canneries and Miku, because of course, our targets are not determined, Madam Speaker, by who represents where, or whether it is your minister who has the say, but by the information that is supplied, again, by instruments such as the country poverty assessment. And according to the last survey that was done, communities such as ancillary canneries and Miku turned out to be among the poorest communities in St. Lucia. So we have to do everything we can to ensure that we alleviate the plight of those people, of the people of those communities, and ensure that we provide a better quality of life for them. So the youth, but however, this program will target specifically young people. So the Youth Empowerment for Life project will be targeting youth of the Castries Basin, ancillary canneries, and Miku. Well, of course, Dennery is also included. And when I say Dennery, I speak of both Dennery North and South. Madam Speaker, since it is a new program, I don't wish to go into details, but just to give honorable members an insight as to what the program entails. The components of that program will include a youth court diversion program, an integrated community-based transformation program, strengthening for the George V Park to service especially the Castries area. And remember I said it is a crime reduction program, so that's where you have all policing, community policing, and all of those entities coming in. Madam Speaker, under human services, which is that is a synopsis of the figures contained in the estimate for the departments under my portfolio and most of the cluster of departments in that ministry. Of course, as I said later, at some point in the debate, we will hear from the minister responsible. But let me just say that contrary to the misguided view that youth development and sports is not given a prominent place, I wish to say that the reason why we have made it part of a cluster, because honestly, Madam Speaker, I didn't see any advantage anyway of making it a standalone ministry with its own minister. But we intend, again, talking about efficiencies, Madam Speaker, we intend to collaborate among us in that cluster of ministries between equity, social justice and empowerment, local government, creative industries and culture, youth development and sports, we intend to work collaboratively to ensure that we maximize the limited resources that were afforded to us in this year's estimate by the Minister of Finance. And that is very important, Madam Speaker. And let me just say before I end, Madam Speaker, that I am very grateful for, and I'm sure the Minister of Finance will be surprised to hear that statement, because we, and I say we, meaning the three ministers involved, fought fiercely to get a lot more than we have here, Madam Speaker, and we can do with a lot more. But of course, the realities of our financial constraints, we have to face and deal with. And I'm saying, given the constraints that we have financially, I am pleased to say that a substantial allocation has been made for that cluster of ministries, which I am grateful for. Very often, Madam Speaker, when things are tight, the first cuts come to the social services. But we have in 4 social services or the cluster of ministries. And so, let it not be repeated that there is diminished prominence by any department under that cluster because of the fact that it has become a cluster of ministries. We are looking at efficacy. We want to work together, maximize the limited resources that we have, and again, our mantra is doing more with less. And so when we talk about being more efficient, that is what we talk about, and I'm a proponent of that, and I'm consistent as far as that is concerned. And Madam Speaker, before I take my seat, let me just address a comment that was made by the member for Denry North. He made reference to a statement that I made in this Honorable House previously, when I, of course, while he was busy heckling me while making my contribution, I indicated to him that he should pay more attention instead to his handling of the national lotteries. What I said then were statements of fact that there were almost 80 contracts issued leading up to the last general election by the National Lottery, and that the modus operandi of the previous Minister of Youth Development of Sport contravened the National Lotteries Act. Madam Speaker, let me repeat what I just said. I said the actions of the previous Minister of Youth Development and Sports contravened the Lotteries Act. And Madam, you look a little curious, Madam Speaker. I will elaborate. Madam Speaker, there was a special account set up for the Minister on Invitation today. That is not permissible. That is not normal. That contravenes the regulations of the National Lottery. That should not be. Madam Speaker, there is a board set up to preside over the operations of the National Lottery. No minister, while it may fall under your portfolio, no minister is in a position to dictate to the board of the National Lottery who they should give money and how much they should give who, or just approve allocations for anybody. He admitted during his presentation that he did just that. Madam Speaker, I implore the honorable member that, he should reflect on his sins and be contrite about them. Do not stand up and beat his chest and, launch into attacks on anyone. Because there's a lot more that I could say, Madam Speaker, but that is not my place to do so. That is not my style to do so. But when I'm attacked, Madam Speaker, it is instinctive that I react. So, the impropriety that was perpetuated then, as part of this cluster, Madam Speaker, I give you every assurance that I will implore my colleague minister not to go that route, and that he does the proper and more appropriate thing to follow the act and the regulations as stipulated and approved by this very parliament that we all are a part of. Madam Speaker, a mention was also made about the $69,000 made available for coaching. And like I said, it is not my place to speak on this, but there are some issues that you cannot ignore. The fact that $69,000 was approved for coaching does not indicate what our position or our policy is on coaching. I want to remind the honorable member for Dennery North that when he was minister responsible for youth development and sport, there was in place a program where we utilized prominent athletes of various sports, namely track and field, volleyball, boxing, cricket. You see, supporters. Yeah, but when we talk about the supporters that you employed in the NICE program, you have an issue. And the first act of that minister, then minister, was to dismiss every one of them. National athletes. And mind you, Madam Speaker, the intention, the expressed intention of that program was to provide those people with an opportunity to earn a living, to provide for themselves the gear that they need, and at the same time, they impart some of the expertise to the schools under a system where they have the latitude to schedule their operation so that they could get the time to train and develop their craft to be competitive and on the same level as professionals in other countries. We talk about people, Dalton Polius, Zephrinus Noki, what is his last name now? Joseph. All of those people were part of that program, but they were summarily dismissed when the minister assumed the portfolio of youth development and sports. Madam Speaker, we are bringing back such programs. Under the Elite Athlete Program, these are some of the programs that we're going to implement to ensure that we give our local athletes, our local sportsmen and women, the best possible chance to succeed, to go to the next level, and to compete on the world stage to make our country proud. So, Madam Speaker, you will hear a lot more about the $7.2 million allocated for sports. But of course, as the speaker before me himself recognized, that is not the sum total of what we intend to spend on sports. As he himself indicated, there is the national lotteries that was set up for the express purpose of financing youth and sporting activities, and we are going to utilize in a more structured, more targeted manner the resources of that agency to ensure that we augment the $7.2 million allocated for us by the Minister of Finance to ensure that our sportsmen and women, our sports program, thrive in the coming period 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, with this, I wish to say that I fully support the motion before the House today, and I look forward to the appropriations bill when I will be able to go into more in-depth detail on the policies of my government for the social service people of the constituency of Grosley, what this government has in stock for them. Thank you very much.
Honorable Member for Mico South, Prime Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs, the Public Service Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Honourable House do stand adjourned until Thursday, the 27th of April 2017, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Honourable members, somebody put it on.
Madam Speaker, if I can amend and ask that this House be adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned until Thursday, the 27th day of April 2017 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This House do stand adjourned until Thursday, 27th of April at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.
All rise.
Well, you just heard from the MP for Grosley, Honorable Leonard Spider Montoot, ending the second segment of the one of the 2017-2018 estimates of revenue and expenditure. The Grosley MP spoke on several constituency and ministerial projects, among them the redesigning of the Grosley Square and the completion of the Human Resource Development Center, which it says will serve, among other things, as an emergency shelter. Among the ministerial projects, the minister indicated that the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice and Empowerment would be undertaking some work in the areas of education, human resource development and youth at risk, and also some drainage and footpath projects. Over $500,000 has been allocated to undertaking a poverty assessment survey, and that is a very important tool that will help to determine the extent of poverty on the island. He was preceded by Honorable Ezekiel Joseph, MP for Babino, who spoke of the implementation of a 3-year support program for farmers. He disclosed that the government had commenced talks with potential markets as it continues to source new markets for banana farmers, according to the Babino MP, who is also the Minister for Agriculture. As early as January 2018, St. Lucia banana farmers would have access to a new market in France. Honorable Sean Edward, who is the MP for Dennery North and a former youth and sports minister, said that he said that the allocation towards youth and sports is insufficient, and so he has called for more monies to be made available in that area. He has also requested some assistance in improving the health service in the Dennery North constituency. And finally, we have the MP for Vieux North, who was the first speaker for this afternoon, and that is Honorable Moses Baptiste, and he expressed his desire to see more allocations towards the fisheries sectors, and he particularly singled out the Prale jetty. He also asked for the government to give some attention to the Vieux water supply project, which is very vital to the constituents of Vieux North. As a cultural activist, the Vieux MP has welcomed the $20,000 injection into the Laos Festival, but feels that more could have been done. Well, this is where we wrap things up for today. You've been watching the live broadcast of the debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure, which was brought to you live via the National Television Network and Radio St. Lucia. Join us tomorrow, Thursday, April 27th, from 10 a.m. for the continuation of the debate on the 2017-2018 estimates of revenue and expenditure. On behalf of the management team and the production team at the National Television Network, I'm Juita Peters signing off for today.
I am going to talk to all